From the jump, the apocalypse kicks into high gear as the invaders effortlessly obliterate humanity's front lines. Inhaling the dusty air among the ruins, our protagonist and his partner survey the total devastation surrounding them. Absolutely livid at the destruction, the blonde warrior questions if anyone else managed to survive this mess. Giving it to him straight, the purple-haired magic user regretfully confirms that the rest of their team is gone. Against this brutal enemy, even top-tier fighters were completely annihilated with no opportunity to escape. Without hesitation, he pleads for the girl's total support, despite his strategies sounding completely insane to her. Without a second of doubt, the blonde warrior grips his shield, making it undeniably clear he won't back down from his objective. Glaring at the massive red armored monstrosity, the protagonist announces his intention to strike the killing blow. The mage starts freaking out, reminding him that their whole squad failed to do any damage, but he flat out refuses to retreat. Emitting a massive aura of golden power, the warrior funnels a sacred light technique directly into his weapon. Sacrificing his own vitality, he shines brilliantly while unleashing the 10th stance of his combat style. Observing this insane show of strength, the violet-haired mage realizes her partner is far from giving up. Launching himself through the air directly at the crimson giant, the protagonist initiates a full-power, all-out attack. In response, the massive beast lifts an arm, casting a devastating spell meant to utterly destroy the fighter. Completely focused and without an ounce of fear, the blonde warrior dives straight into the center of the approaching destruction. The brutal collision between the holy blade and the red fist triggers an unimaginably huge explosion. This epic struggle of power is so fierce that it begins to rip apart the surrounding terrain. Amidst the chaotic clash, the protagonist calls out to his companion, demanding magical assistance. The mage responds in a flash, conjuring a green glyph to maintain their defensive shields during the impact. While the warrior keeps the beast busy with a close-range assault, she blasts the creature's blind spots with emerald magic. However, the monster retaliates fiercely with a gigantic crimson beam that completely derails their momentum. The blast launches our hero backward, causing him to scrape violently across the rubble. Refusing to accept defeat under any circumstances, he charges back into the fray, his blade shining more intensely than before. He unleashes a critical blast of golden energy, intending to finally shatter the monster's dense plating. Stunned by the visual, the mage simply observes the unbelievable might of that secret art. Sadly for our team, the gigantic foe casually deflects the ultimate strike with horrifying ease. Exceeding his physical boundaries by a mile, our hero screams that the battle isn't even close to finishing. The blood leaking from his lips is a dead giveaway that his physical form is on the verge of total collapse. Panicking, the sorceress alerts him that his body can't withstand the recoil for much longer. Trembling and tripping over his own feet from absolute fatigue, the blonde warrior refuses to tap out. Realizing things are going downhill rapidly, the purple-haired magic user opts for a desperate measure. Extracting an enigmatic artifact from her gear, she prepares to execute her ultimate contingency plan. She casts a green magical cage, completely detaining the bewildered protagonist against his wishes. Wearing a serious expression, the sorceress declares she is preserving his life, because he is humanity's definitive final chance. Livid, the warrior yells that if the beast isn't defeated immediately, everyone is going to die regardless. Completely composed, she clarifies that this is precisely the reason she is placing the responsibility of saving the future on his shoulders. She then unveils a pocket watch, an ancient mystic relic inherited from her family line. The sorceress cautions that time is running out, and they can't afford a lengthy explanation of its mechanics. Desperately, she implores the warrior to prevent these monsters from succeeding when he gets his second chance. The abrupt manifestation of a gigantic spectral clock sends the protagonist into a panic, demanding an explanation for her wild strategy. Tuning out his protests, she activates her ultimate ability, entrusting the destiny of the whole planet to him. In that very moment, a massive crimson magical glyph consumes the sorceress's form. Sporting a melancholic smile, she bids a final farewell to her steadfast combat ally. Suddenly, a sapphire energy blast streaks across the heavens, confirming the taboo magic was a success. A catastrophic explosion completely wipes out the vicinity, permanently concluding the brutal conflict. The timepiece-shaped relic abandoned in the wreckage serves as the sole evidence of her existence. Fissures begin to spread across the devastated earth surrounding the magical device. Hacking up blood on the burnt ground, someone fights desperately to live through the disaster. Exhausted and at death's door, the violet-haired sorceress quietly expresses her relief that her crazy strategy actually succeeded. The divine, completely broken time reversal skill is at last activated by the mysterious relic. The protagonist's consciousness embarks on a journey through time, plunging into the past to begin a fresh attempt. The Crimson Behemoth bellows furiously, abandoned as temporal magic entirely restructures the universe. Drained of all energy, the girl falls, praying to the gods that her ally can alter this dark destiny. Right before being obliterated by the foe's strike, her single desire is to get the opportunity to reunite with the blonde warrior in another lifetime. The fighter jolts awake hollering his ally's name, only to discover he's relaxing inside an incredibly luxurious estate. Suffering from a pounding headache, the protagonist, now sporting black hair, realizes he is situated in an arrogant noble's opulent sleeping quarters. Completely disoriented, he deduces that this aristocratic environment must be the result of the temporal rewind spell. Still wrapped in blankets, the youth attempts to comprehend the surreal journey he just experienced. An elegant servant quietly enters the chamber to see if the young lord requires any assistance. Screaming at full volume, he orders her to bring him weapons to combat the invaders, causing the frightened maid to think he just suffered a terrible night terror. Deeply bewildered when she refers to him as Noah, he questions the servant about her identity, and she formally introduces herself as Lydia. Glancing at his hands, it dawns on him that his physical form has suffered a severe downgrade. It is glaringly apparent that these frail muscles are a far cry from his previous battle-tested body. He speculates whether he simply transferred into a normal person's body, or if a grander mystery is unfolding. Seizing the maid forcefully, he demands she tell him his true identity and his exact current location. Horrified by his aggressive demeanor, she shrinks back, questioning if his illness-induced delusions are returning. Bypassing pleasantries, the dark-haired boy elevates his tone and firmly insists on direct responses. Quivering uncontrollably, the servant clarifies that he is Noah, the fourth in line for the Dasker family legacy. Upon inquiring about the current era, he is entirely shocked to discover he has traveled back to the year 850. Running the numbers, the protagonist comprehends he has reversed time a complete decade before the world's destruction. Collapsing in despair, he cries out of pure misery over being reborn into the most merciless, corrupt clan of sword-wielders in existence. Interrupting his emotional collapse, a rap on the door signals that a person named Selena is entering. Holding a serving dish, the incoming maid walks in to deliver the young lord's prescribed medication. The servant notes that Scar personally crafted this healing mixture to assist his younger sibling. Rejecting that narrative instantly, our hero stares intensely at the cup, sensing malicious motives from afar. Activating his purple-hued mystic vision, the protagonist analyzes the suspicious fluid inside the bowl. Driven completely by instinct, he shatters the dish against the floor, terrifying the maids. Exactly on cue, weapon-wielding guards storm the bedroom, prompting the protagonist to nonchalantly question their identities. Sporting an arrogant smile, the squad commander claims they entered to investigate the sound of breaking pottery. However, the youth's piercing glare indicates he isn't buying that flimsy excuse. Feigning offense at the rejection of Scar's remedy, the mercenary declares they will simply compel him to consume the next batch. Grinning with absolute disdain, the protagonist questions if these low-level goons have lost their grip on reality. He proceeds to challenge them to drink the supposed cure themselves, exposing that the liquid is actually deadly poison. The boy clarifies that his divine vision identified the assassination attempt solely through the liquid's unnatural hue. Frustrated that their initial strategy failed, the team leader resolves to handle the situation violently. Observing his enemies drop their facade, the youth adopts an expression of pure, unbothered arrogance. Completely relaxed, he criticizes the sheer disrespect of dispatching bottom-tier thugs to assassinate him. Flexing his hands, the aristocrat prepares to amuse himself by tossing these hitmen around. Without delay, the commander barks orders for his subordinates to restrain the allegedly defenseless noble immediately. Clenching their weapons, the mercenaries charge towards the bed of the presumably weak boy. Acting swiftly, one of the assailants attempts to grapple the protagonist's arm to pin him down. The minion, however, is greeted by a blindingly fast kick that launches him aggressively in reverse. The strike connects perfectly with the man's jaw, fracturing bone upon collision. Enraged, the second attacker throws a heavy swing, but ends up striking nothing but the air. Taking him totally by surprise, the youth executes a vicious counterattack directly into the mercenary's torso. Yet, the protagonist observes that his current physical frame lacks the power to actually incapacitate them with a single blow. Grasping the sheer weakness of his new body, the logic behind the poison assassination, plot suddenly becomes perfectly clear. Unconcerned with his wounded subordinates, the commander simply commands them to execute the boy using overwhelming force. Out of the blue, a luminous, translucent system interface materializes directly within the protagonist's field of vision. Assessing the mercenaries' health data, the youth actually offers them an opportunity to escape with their lives. The digital interface reveals that he has gained a handy new ability to analyze stat readouts. The readout verifies that these assassins are nothing more than bottom of the barrel level 1 grunts. Livid at the blatant disrespect, one of the thugs leaps forward, executing a forceful downward slash with his sword. Trusting his deeply ingrained combat experience, the boy evades the deadly swing by the narrowest of margins. Taking full advantage of the blunder, the young lord buries his knee into the attacker's stomach, knocking him completely unconscious. Thinking tactically, the black-haired boy strips the sword directly from the unconscious man's limp hand. With a blade in hand, he advances for a direct confrontation, lighting up the chamber with the friction of clashing steel. Demonstrating deadly perception, he pivots to deflect a treacherous thrust aimed at his back. The sleeping quarters transform into an absolute battlefield as the terrified servants freak out and flee the scene. Stumbling awkwardly over their long skirts, the maids make a frantic dash toward the doorway. The mercenary leader commends the natural skill of the Dasker family, but the youth orders him to cut the chatter and get on with the brawl. At that precise moment, a full, mysterious sensation takes hold of the protagonist's entire physical being. A venomous violet mist begins pouring from the boy's blade, signaling the awakening of a sinister magical force. This cursed power is the precise reason why members of this family tree invoke such terror and dread. Formerly an expert in divine energy, he is now forced to manage an aura composed of absolute decay. Naturally, forcing divine and demonic forces to coexist within a single vessel triggers an incredibly volatile reaction. Observing the boy stumble, the commander chuckles, asserting that the dark power is at last becoming unmanageable. The squad leader confesses that the supposed remedy was explicitly formulated to sabotage the youth's magic internally. The extreme physical stress of the battle initiated a lethal chain reaction with the tainted energy inside him, acknowledging the very real possibility of internally combusting. He wagers his survival entirely on his physical resilience. Defying every magical law, the sacred radiance and corrupted shadows combine to form a freakish vortex. Concentrating intensely, the boy draws upon the divine force of his previous existence to suppress the tainted aura. Scoffing at the seemingly futile struggle, the henchman readies his blade and rushes forward, expecting an effortless victory. The hitman activates a stealth art, blending into the environment while stirring up a blood-red fog. Using underhanded tactics, the assailant appears directly at the aristocrat's back, preparing to deliver a lethal strike. In a stunning display, the youth intercepts the deadly thrust single-handedly, appearing entirely unfazed. Dumbfounded, the adversary struggles to comprehend how the boy managed to control the mixed energy well enough to stop his attack. Noting via the interface that his foe is a mere level 3, the protagonist insults him and insists he show proper deference to his superiors. The black-haired boy executes a violent push, sending his adversary flying across the chamber to create distance. He immediately follows through by unleashing a crescent-shaped gale that utterly obliterates the floorboards. The mercenary leader falls back on his evasive shadow skills to escape being completely bifurcated. The fight resumes with intense ferocity, illuminating the space with a mixture of divine and corrupted magical sparks. The combatants increase their speed, transforming the chamber into a chaotic whirlwind of clashing blades. The protagonist's physical weakness is compensated for by his peerless combat instincts, giving him the upper hand in the duel. Severely lacking the required speed, the mercenary commander suffers a grievous cut directly to his leg. Remaining motionless, the boy concludes that those brief skirmishes provided enough data to completely predict his opponent's moves. Dripping with sarcasm, he questions what happened to his enemy's earlier bravado, noting that the man is now gasping for air like a trapped animal. The youth offers a chilling grin while observing the self-proclaimed stealth expert begin to perspire profusely. Falling for the provocation, the intruder abandons all rationality and attacks in a state of sheer fury. Whining pathetically, the defeated man shouts that his ultimate art cannot possibly be deflected. Leaning on his familiar, cowardly tactic, he transforms back into the crimson fog, entirely convinced of his own imperceptibility. Positioned in the very center of the chaos, Noah shuts his eyes and focuses solely on the ambient life force in the area. In an instant, the seasoned fighter's acute perception locates the concealed adversary. Whirling around, he strikes at a seemingly vacant area, violently impaling his opponent on the spot. The agonizing wound causes blood to spurt, entirely dispelling the hitman's ineffective camouflage. Collapsed on the ground, the mercenary mutters in disbelief, refusing to acknowledge the failure of his illusion. The boy imparts a harsh truth: concealing your physical form means nothing when your magical aura is so overwhelmingly obvious. Coughing out heavy amounts of blood, the vanquished attacker desperately asks to understand the nature of that monstrous ability. Propping his sword against his shoulder, the boy maintains a neutral expression and confesses he has absolutely no idea how he executed that move. Internally, however, he realizes that blending divine and corrupted energies birthed an incredibly frightening force. The involuntary fusion of his sacred, heroic spirit with this tainted vessel resulted in a deadly new weapon. If he managed to fully control this twin energy source, he could absolutely prevent the impending global apocalypse. Lost in his recollections, he offers a quiet word of gratitude to his former companion for her unbelievable courage. The servants eventually find their courage and rush back inside, shrieking frantically while inquiring if he requires a healer. Offering a reassuring gesture, the boy instructs them to calm down as he surveys the corpses scattered across his quarters. Suddenly, an avian courier glides through the window, depositing a sealed letter bearing his name. The servant identifies the wax crest, clarifying that the family patriarch, Lord Victor, is summoning him. Tearing open the letter, Noah discovers that his father intends to formally enter him into the clan's lethal battle for inheritance. Baffled by this revelation, he struggles to understand why the entire household normalizes such a deadly tournament. Growing skeptical, he interrogates the servants, insisting they explain the logic behind this twisted tradition. One of the maids states that this is common knowledge for any individual employed within the Dasker estate. She clarifies that this fatal competition strengthens the family overall, allowing the heirs to drain the vitality of their defeated siblings. In essence, the children eliminate one another, and the sole survivor assimilates all their abilities to achieve unmatched strength. Scanning the recollections of his previous timeline, he notes that this sinister family scarcely received a mention in historical texts. Anxious, Lydia swallows hard and questions whether he actually intends to partake in such a massacre. Brimming with confidence, the ex-warrior gives a casual shrug and remarks that they will soon see. He contrasts this chaotic clan with his previous divine order, a group universally revered and essentially idolized by all. Conversely, the Dasker family, due to their corrupt practices, inspired nothing but revulsion and fear wherever they appeared. Nevertheless, it is a universally acknowledged fact that Victor Dasker, the patriarch, is the most invincible fighter on the planet. Positioned before the Grand Hall's entrance, he steels his nerves to confront the most dreadful family members imaginable. Striding confidently, Noah enters the chamber fully prepared to assert his dominance. As he walks purposefully down the Crimson Runner, the chilling tension silences every single relative present. Reaching the middle of the space, he boldly declares his arrival precisely in accordance with the Lord's summons. Observing the surrounding individuals, the protagonist rapidly assesses the rival heirs gathered in the chamber. The initial target of his gaze is the eldest son, Damien, who is clad in a gigantic set of plate armor. Beside the eldest, Julia radiates an icy, merciless aura that perfectly embodies the status of the premier daughter. A bit farther away, he notices the second eldest brother, Sees, appearing utterly disinterested and detached. Close by, the youthful Eve seems incredibly irritated, obviously despising these obligatory clan gatherings. However, his gaze fixes directly on Scar, the degenerate to blame for the poisoned medicine. Seething internally, the protagonist acknowledges that the scoundrel lurking in the rear nearly killed him earlier without provocation. Initiating the conversation, Julia offers a snide remark, observing that the gossip regarding the youngest sibling's healing was factual. Speaking bluntly, he retorts that he survived because he noticed the toxic snare and is now returning to business. Arching a brow, the blonde woman inspects her little brother from head to toe. Taken aback by his newfound bravery, the third sibling interjects, scoffing that funneling resources into such a frail boy is a complete squander of effort. Retaliating regarding the assassination attempt, Noah silences the redhead, advising him to muster some courage and handle his own grim tasks in the future. Livid over the insult, Scar begins cursing and nearly leaps forward to strangle the protagonist manually. The eldest sibling lifts a hand, terminating the domestic squabble, and requires complete quiet to begin the ceremony. A thunderous crash reverberates from the primary doors, heralding the imposing arrival of Lord Victor. Each step he takes on the staircase terrifies the attendees, and the ambient heat drops solely due to the intense mental dread. Immediately, every single hair genuflects, displaying total obedience to the clan leader. Perspiration beads on Scar's forehead simply from existing in the exact same space as his horrifying father. It is unbelievable. The patriarch's aura is so oppressive that it nearly causes the reincarnated No to collapse as well. The protagonist recalls that even at the height of his past power, challenging this silver-haired titan was absolute suicide. Bearing the moniker of one of the 9 demonic stars, the patriarch rests in his seat, emitting unadulterated murderous pressure. Lounging in his chair, the seasoned warrior surveys his offspring, pleased to witness the entire lineup assembled in one place. Being concise, he commands the commencement of the succession war procedures right away at the highest level of the stronghold. Piercing the boy with his gaze, the Lord demands clear confirmation regarding his participation in the bloodbath, and he receives precisely that. Speaking with malice, the elder questions what such a fragile boy could possibly hope to accomplish in this fatal competition. Brimming with ego, the youth offers a cunning grin, resembling someone who has already plotted his path to victory. Oozing absolute hubris, the protagonist foretells that every person present will fall, and the leadership of the Dasker clan will belong to him. Astonished by such unbelievable nerve, the patriarch raises his gaze, questioning if the boy is suffering from severe delirium. The clan leader rigidly asks whether the youth has genuinely issued a lethal challenge to all of his brothers and sisters. Shattering expectations, No makes it clear that his targets aren't limited strictly to the relatives currently in the room. He elaborates that his crosshairs are locked onto absolutely every single person inhaling oxygen in the estate's grand hall. The boy lays it out plainly: his deadly intentions extend far beyond just his charming siblings. Staring directly into the elder's eyes, he issues a stark warning that the leader occupying the throne is also on the chopping block. The sheer audacity etched across the dark-haired boy's features confirms that absolutely nobody within the stronghold is immune to his crusade. Reacting to the insolence, the ancient monster projects a burst of magical pressure that rattles the very bedrock of the estate. The atmosphere becomes so oppressively dense that the ornate windows burst into pieces without a single physical touch. Experiencing a crushing burden bearing down on his spine, Noah grits his teeth to avoid collapsing to the floor. Enduring the heavy aura, he recognizes that the patriarch's dark power is essentially a world-breaking anomaly. Reveling in the sheer terror, the clan leader ridicules the youth, questioning if he genuinely believes he can conquer such overwhelming force. Straining to force the words out, Noah confidently affirms that he can, displaying absolutely zero dread or hesitation. Genuinely intrigued by the boy's sheer willpower, the patriarch reduces the oppressive aura and inquires about his true ambitions. The youth asserts his desire for ultimate supremacy to guarantee that no one can steal what rightfully belongs to him. Captivated by this immense drive, the elder's weathered features contort into a sinister grin. Delighted by the sheer ego, the patriarch declares that the fragile boy is finally exhibiting the corrupted nature cherished by their family. He officially sanctions Noah's participation in the deadly tournament, challenging any dissenting voices to speak their minds immediately or remain silent forever. Dumbfounded, the remaining siblings quiet down, entirely devoid of the courage required to defy the ancient monster. Gazing at the black-haired youth, Victor issues his ultimate directive: annihilate anyone who attempts to obstruct your path to power. Following the tumultuous gathering, the dawn introduces a deceptive illusion of tranquility over the estate's lush training grounds. The protagonist is already expending energy, relentlessly striking the practice targets in the yard with maximum effort. A heavy impact cleaves the timber target in two, proving he is steadily adapting to his daily morning regimen. Evaluating his physical condition, he acknowledges his progress while recognizing that his current physique remains severely underdeveloped. The primary obstacle is the severe disharmony. Attempting to fuse divine energy with this vessel's inherently tainted aura is an absolute nightmare. Investigating these conflicting reactions, the hero summons his digital interface to consult the system's diagnostics. The display informs him that this cursed fusion induces intense physical exhaustion for a specific duration. However, his solitary research is interrupted by Julia, who had been observing the entire training area from the shadows. Speaking her mind, the blonde remarks that their father has entirely transferred his favoritism from the dull Damien to the youngest sibling. Completely unfazed, the younger brother questions whether she came for a duel or a conversation, kicking a practice blade toward her feet. Presenting the timber weapon, he challenges the aristocratic woman to exchange some early morning blows. Taken aback by his lack of fear, she retrieves the stick exactly as he charges forward with maximum velocity. She deflects his initial leaping attack wearing an utterly bored expression, establishing who is actually in control of the skirmish. Offering a sinister grin, the fighter cautions him that she doesn't wander into the practice area at dawn without a specific agenda. Failing to penetrate his sister's guard, No exhales deeply, fully comprehending the immense stat disparity separating them. Abruptly, the girl retaliates with a swift punch, sending the youth crashing directly into the dirt. Unexpectedly, he is rather pleased about hitting the ground, as he essentially offered himself up as a punching bag just to farm her data. The chaotic exchange of wooden blades generates a powerful gust of wind across the training ground's greenery. Assuming he poses zero threat, she unleashes reckless swings, compelling him to retreat and exposing all his vulnerabilities. Aiming her weapon directly at his face, she labels his fearless demeanor from the previous day's assembly an absolute joke. Checking his digital overlay, he notices that his sister's physical strength rests at a solid 7-star rank. Covered in sweat, the veteran concedes her physical superiority, offering a highly sarcastic smirk. Exhausted by his antics, the girl unleashes an angled sweep that completely tears through the timber floorboards. Forced onto the defensive, the sheer velocity of her assault jams his reaction time as he attempts to parry the strikes. Operating entirely on instinct, their practice blades collide, igniting with untamed and fierce brutality. The kinetic energy of the clash propels the rookie across the yard, leaving him groaning from what feels like fractured ribs. The terror was so genuine that his hijacked magical abilities completely short-circuited during his desperate bid for survival. Recovering quickly, he dashes ahead and retaliates, producing an ear-splitting collision. Fascinated by the dual-toned energy, Julia demands to know the true origin of the bizarre magical aura mentioned in the rumors. Adopting an incredibly arrogant posture, she asserts absolute knowledge regarding every single supernatural mutation within their family tree. The youth's sharp intellect deduces that it is highly probable no servant in this estate has ever laid eyes on divine magic before. Thinking tactically, he grins, planning to utilize his dual-colored aura by disguising it as a bizarre, corrupted biological quirk. Putting on a complete act, he boasts that this supposed biological glitch would bring the blonde goddess of the sword to tears. He pivots rapidly, executing a lethal stab coated in that chaotic blend of sacred and demonic magic. Exhilarated by the dangerous game, she calls out his name, entirely prepared to rain absolute destruction down upon his head. At the very climax of the clash, the boy recalls the direct command to eliminate and harvest his siblings' power cores. Without rushing, the maniac plants her heels firmly, ridiculing his fairy assault as though it were entirely insignificant. A scarlet explosion bursts from her figure as she summons the demons to harvest his life energy prematurely. Engulfed by her suffocating pressure, the youth's wide eyes reflect red as the lethal edge approaches. Acting swiftly, the maid intervenes by throwing Julia her genuine, razor-sharp sword without any hesitation. Noah eagerly catches the weapon, whereas the deranged blonde entirely abandons her guard against actual steel. The woman unleashes apocalyptic magic upward, generating abyssal tornadoes in an incredibly terrifying display. Assaulted by volcanic fire, the youth evades, yet her residual smoke attacks track him with incomprehensible speed. Dehydrating in the intense heat, he establishes a cross block, grumbling that his sweat is evaporating entirely too fast. The mere friction of her garments scorches the grass as she unleashes God-tier techniques with her blade. Cornered within a firewall, No accesses his remaining divine tricks, crossing his arms in sheer desperation. Infuriated, the blonde beast comprehends that her supposedly weak attack actually connected, and she begins to lecture him. Having successfully struck the kid, she extorts him, commanding that he reveal the hidden techniques the elders concealed from him. Issuing an ultimate warning, the psycho lays down the terms, guaranteeing a violent knockout if he refuses to fight at maximum capacity immediately. Incanting the shadow dance technique, an ocean of red fire incinerates their surroundings, blending physical strikes with magical prana. Recognizing the deadly conclusion of her sequence, his divided energy halos flare up, reinforcing his weapon for the emergency. An infernal laser of violet destruction shatters the sound barrier, intending to turn the opponent's bones to dust. Swallowing hard, the youth's defensive barrier collides violently against the dense wall of this cosmic magical clash. The volcanic disaster completely wipes out the yard, forcing the eavesdropping maids to dive for safety. Amidst the smoky echoes, the monster ridicules him, stating that a bare arm guard won't even tickle a magma wave of her caliber. Insulting his lineage, She demands to know who authorized him to bring bare fists to a knife fight with her magical claws. Relocating flawlessly into his blind spots, she conjures shadowy slashes without a single hint of hesitation. Supported by higher forces, the lethal blow misses, striking the enemy's sword instead and generating severe stress fractures. A massive collision turns the entire battlefield upside down, scattering dust everywhere as the boy struggles to recover on the hot earth. Sporting a wicked smile, the protagonist shouts and laughs over the reality that she must exert maximum strength simply to keep up. Frankly, it was a pitiful sight. The retaliatory strike launched the unfortunate boy soaring helplessly through the sky. Clenching his teeth, the veteran reviews the witch's data and understands he is trapped in a corner nobody escapes from easily. Planting his foot firmly, he immediately activates his concealed divine array before she manages to take his head off. The blonde observes with curiosity as this luminous aura eclipses the standard venomous atmosphere of their opulent murder house. Driven to his absolute breaking point, his projected divinity proves that the holy potion spared him from his psychotic clan's coffins. Spasming tendons reveal the chronic penalty for overexerting that highly unstable, hybrid threshold. Correcting his stance, the boy questions whether engaging in bizarre conversations during combat is a fundamental law of this sinister syndicate. Changing the subject, he dismisses her theories regarding why immediate death isn't the standard in their bloody tournaments. Piercing him with an icy stare, she drops the theory that deliberately stunning raw development is a routine aspect of their daily training grind. Essentially, butchering feeble relatives provides a smaller energy yield than fattening up premium livestock in these divine slaughterhouses. Specifically, the caliber of his counter attack earned enough merit to demonstrate that this rookie actually holds some value. Driven by predatory instincts, she discloses her twisted preferences, stating the exact combination of powers she intends to devour. Exhausted by the noble assassin's endless trash talk, he mentally prepares to unleash the weight of this monster's greatest fear. Activating the 8th stance, the corrupted master conjures apocalyptic cyclones, cementing a one-way ticket for his adversary's soul. Beyond the scarlet veils of flame, booming shouts interrupt the chaos, demanding a mandatory ceasefire from everyone. Clad in heavy plating, the captain leaps into the inferno, utilizing his personal sword to intercept the treacherous axe hurled at the youngest boy's back. Stunned, the armored warrior orders the killer to retreat, highlighting that she was seconds away from snipping the youth's life signs. The knight implores the deranged woman not to ruin the ceremony, reminding her that these bouts require noble strategy rather than simple mercy killings. Her weapon parried, the magic user pauses and listens, completely bewildered that the youth's energy reserves were barely worth 2 rusty coins. Gasping for breath just to stay alive, the boy inspects the plated knight, questioning what sort of madman wanders into a deadly crossfire like that for no reason. Keeping a calm demeanor, the brown-haired warrior reveals he was merely conducting a mandatory evaluation of the youth per Patriarch Victor's explicit instructions. Evaluating the skirmish, the teacher points out that if the protagonist truly possessed a 4 or 5-star core, he wouldn't be having such a hard time. Recognizing the duel has concluded, the boy powers down his violet holy aura, inhaling deeply to recover from the impact. Concurring with the knight, the platinum-haired woman sheathes her blade and confesses she completely overestimated the youngest, as his frailty is still quite obvious. Prior to leaving, she cautions her sibling to remember that his energy core is already on her hit list for future harvest. Facing away, she mocks him, claiming that once he gains genuine power, they will have a legitimate duel where she promises to finish him off. Grinning with absolute certainty, the black-haired boy retorts that he eagerly anticipates that moment, completely thrilled by the prospect of taking her abilities. While the sister disappears from view, the warrior's instincts continuously alert him that there is something exceptionally suspicious regarding the boy's aura. Based on his analysis, that parried strike possessed entirely too much force to be halted by a pathetic 2-star ability. Connecting the dots, the knight concludes that the young noble is undoubtedly concealing a secret weapon. Distant in her own chambers, the sister sports a malicious grin, obviously relishing the boy's newfound development. Standing on her terrace, she whispers to herself, wishing the little brat would grow stronger quickly, just to make hunting him more entertaining. Simultaneously, in a different section of the estate, Scar is having an epic meltdown, destroying the furniture and swearing at his youngest brother's very being. Collapsed in his seat amidst frightened servants, the resentful redhead is unable to comprehend how the failure received approval to enter the deadly inheritance tournament. Consumed entirely by envy, he recalls that their father always ignored him and completely barred him from entering the contest in the beginning. Livid at the perceived slight, the cowardly sibling hurls a cup against the wall, shouting that he refuses to tolerate this mockery. Directly during his temper tantrum, a minion quietly enters carrying a thick file containing intelligence on the youngest sibling. Listening to the report, the redhead reveals a sinister smirk, rejoicing over the information as though it were a divine blessing. Brimming with malicious plans, he vows upon all that is sacred to sabotage Noah and permanently eliminate him from the line of succession. Several hours afterward in the training grounds, the brown-haired warrior finally offers the protagonist a formal introduction. Executing a minor bow, the man introduces himself as Kyle and states that Lord Victor directly appointed him to be the youth's martial instructor. Clarifying the arrangement, the teacher mentions the patriarch believed it would be incredibly tedious if the youngest perished prematurely, hence dispatching some assistance. Discreetly, the protagonist activates his concealed appraisal skill to examine the instructor's attributes. It is plainly obvious that Kyle is a powerhouse, boasting 6 and 7-star stats that cement his status as a complete juggernaut in combat. Without any delay, the youth questions whether they will begin with practice duels, or if there is an alternative agenda. Producing a closed envelope, the knight discloses that he possesses a critical, direct command issuing right from the clan leader. Scanning the document, the boy discovers his objective is to investigate and eradicate a cluster of corrupted fog that recently materialized in the vicinity. The digital interface blinks, cautioning that this miasma constitutes an environmental hazard and the zone will only recover if the boss monster is eliminated. Dismissing the concern, the boy understands this is merely the patriarch's ideal pretext for plunging him into real combat. Smiling internally, the protagonist views this as a tremendous victory and resolves to utilize the assignment to farm experience far away from the estate's prying gaze. Entering the eerie forest, Sir Kyle takes things seriously, dispatching the lesser monsters with clinical accuracy. He shouts commands, urging the team to maintain their speed and secure the area before the corrupted fog can expand. From the rear guard, the teacher observes the youth cut down a strange beast, causing dark fluid to splatter across the scene. Murmuring to one another, a few of the foot soldiers mock the protagonist, assuming he must be petrified given his meager 2-star combat rating. Paying no mind to the hecklers, Kyle internally questions what exactly the clan leader observed in the boy to authorize a genuine monster hunt. Abruptly, a trooper shouts, directing the entire group's gaze straight toward the center of the open space. Sprinting to the spot, the team discovers several comatose children lying in the dirt, causing the atmosphere to immediately turn grim. The armored instructor glances at his men, questioning what their strategy should be now that innocents are involved in the hazard zone. Without any hesitation, he determines that trekking back through the lethal woods while carrying children is suicidal, mandating that they destroy the miasma source immediately. Hoisting the youths onto their shoulders, the group ventures further into the forest, which is becoming increasingly sinister as time passes. Glancing up at the blackened canopy, the protagonist perceives that the corrupted aura is escalating at a deeply concerning pace. Contorted timber and a violet fog begin enveloping the surroundings, signifying they have arrived at the boss monster's domain. Intensely concentrated, the boy alerts the team that the miasma's epicenter is directly ahead and the boss creature is undoubtedly present. Without any warning, a colossal silhouette violently breaches the foliage, leaping directly toward the unit. Clutching his sword, Kyle shouts that the threat is a gigantic scorpia, and the situation has officially deteriorated drastically. With an ear-splitting thud, the corrupted arachnid touches down, and Kyle orders his soldiers to evacuate the children from the immediate danger area. Under immense pressure, the teacher clarifies that the toxic fog enhanced the beast to an A-rank threat with armor significantly harder than iron. In a split second, the gigantic tail tipped with a lethal stinger plummets toward them like a falling star. Extremely vigilant, the youth calls out the incoming strike and prepares to absorb the collision. The impact scatters soil and foliage in all directions, compelling the instructor to cross his blades to avoid being completely flattened. Stunned by the creature's sheer brute force, the teacher cautions that the monster is not merely massive. It is unnaturally agile. Noticing the appendage preparing for another strike, he experiences a wave of dread, utterly convinced the 2-star boy is going to be impaled. Moving with blinding speed, the venomous spike launches toward the boy, ripping directly through the atmosphere. Astounding the entire squad, the youth activates his dual, natured energy core, coating his blade in a protective barrier. Executing a flawless rotation, he intercepts the blow, his footwear carving trenches in the soil as sparks erupt from the stinger's point. His deflection is so incredibly firm that it launches the stinger skyward, providing the team a momentary window to recover. Astonished, the instructor celebrates the successful guard, yet swiftly comprehends that the beast's true danger lies elsewhere. From the very end of its appendage, the monster unleashes venomous spikes that illuminate the area like green projectiles. Deprived of an escape route, the team finds themselves trapped beneath a deadly shower of concentrated toxins. Exacerbating the crisis, the colossal spike begins to emit a scarlet light, indicating the creature is preparing a devastating blast amidst the turmoil. Displaying absolute ruthlessness, the monster discharges a concentrated crimson beam directly from its rear, intending to incinerate the entire team. Moving at lightning speed, the youth funnels additional concealed sacred power into his corrupted center to absorb the incoming energy. Amidst a colossal detonation, the boy deflects the laser, bisecting the assault and directing the destructive force upward into the heavens. Utterly amazed, the troops murmur that the youth is an unbelievable fencing genius, completely ignoring his allegedly low combat rating. However, piercing the dust cloud, the arachnid's appendage twitches anew, recovering from the deflection and preparing to dispense further carnage. Resembling a gigantic warhead, the beast hurls its entire body at the protagonist, utilizing its plated mass to flatten him. Slipping directly beneath the assault, the black-haired boy seizes the vulnerability and buries his luminous sword into the creature's abdomen. Despite striking with absolute maximum effort, he senses his weapon wedge firmly within the monster's dense skeletal armor. Rotating while airborne, the boy executes a rapid barrage of sacred strikes concealed within corrupted magic, fracturing the beast's plating. He lands securely immediately afterward, gasping for air, and plants his boots firmly into the ground to maintain his balance. Assessing the fractured carapace, he grumbles under his breath that this idiotic insect boasts an absurd amount of defensive bulk. Perspiring nervously, the youth murmurs that penetrating its defenses will be incredibly difficult unless he utilizes his fundamental divine techniques at full power. Concurrently, the instructor remains paralyzed, attempting to comprehend where the boy acquired such a masterful combat technique without formal training. Getting straight to the point, the youth shouts at his teacher to actually assist in the battle rather than staring blankly, prompting the man to snap back to reality. Prepared to engage, the protagonist inquires if the instructor can secure a single second of vulnerability, to which the older warrior guarantees success. Showing absolutely zero hesitation, the teacher lets out a battle cry and rushes the enemy, just as the beast readies its deadly crimson beam. Delivering a vicious blow, Kyle forcefully wedges his sword directly into a compromised section of plating, causing the insect to shriek in torment. The successful attack splatters luminescent green fluid across the area, entirely interrupting the monster's energy-gathering process. Capitalizing on that momentary opening, the boy propels himself skyward, completely enveloped in the violet and golden aura of his hybrid power source. Descending rapidly, he touches down upon the appendage and severs the lethal spike entirely with a single, perfect swing. Dark liquid erupts from the severed end, and the protagonist uses the appendage as a springboard to create distance between himself and the beast. Prior to making contact with the earth, the black-haired boy adjusts his form and prepares to execute the final blow. Channeling unadulterated hybrid magic into his weapon, he cleaves through the atmosphere like a thunderbolt, bifurcating the monster entirely. The kinetic backlash from the killing strike completely pulverizes the surrounding terrain, generating an enormous, dust-filled depression in the ground. Collapsing violently against the soil, the colossal arachnid spasms briefly before ultimately perishing permanently. With the threat neutralized, the protagonist sheathes his blade, exhaling profoundly in gratitude that his reckless strategy succeeded. Abruptly, the beast's remains begin dissolving into a noxious vapor, revealing a gleaming object hidden within the wreckage. Without any delay, the boy approaches the carcass and extracts the venomous mandibles, securing them safely within his coat. Displaying a mischievous smile, he informs Instructor Kyle that the toxin housed inside these teeth can dissolve thick plating and will prove incredibly useful in the future. Completely astonished, the teacher at last comprehends why the youth deliberately targeted the lesser insects during their trick, solely to harvest this corrosive substance. Scarcely afforded a moment to recover, crimson pupils begin illuminating the darkened forest, encircling their position entirely. An enormous swarm of corrupted monstrosities emerges from the darkness, lured directly by the scent of carnage and the toxic fog. Immediately, the boy clicks his fingers, igniting emerald magical glyphs upon the earth directly beneath his squad's feet. Utilizing his corrupted combat techniques, he unleashes an arc of power to forcefully repel the advancing wave of beasts. The resulting explosion stirs up debris, effectively halting the swarm's progression for a few invaluable moments. In a state of panic, Instructor Kyle drives his blade into the soil, manifesting a gigantic violet barrier to safeguard the unconscious children. Displaying absolute calm, the youth states that this is a life or death scenario and escape is entirely impossible. Executing an unbelievable leap, he plunges directly into the horde, slicing apart arachnids and corrupted hounds as though they were fragile tissue. Navigating with incomprehensible velocity, he eviscerates a lesser arachnid, reducing it to nothing but fragmented remains. The absolute power behind his slashes generates a concussive blast that entirely clears the perimeter surrounding their defensive shield. Whirling his blade shrouded in concealed divine energy, the protagonist evades a pounce and cleanly decapitates a demonic wolf. A memory of his platinum-haired sister surfaces as he attempts to recall the precise mechanics of her ultimate attack. Modifying his clan's sinister techniques, he compels his aura to mimic the shadow fire that nearly incinerated him previously. Exceeding his physical boundaries, he channels all his available energy and roars the technique's title, Sword Dance of Light and Shadow. Amidst a colossal eruption of golden lightning and violet magic, he unleashes a devastating beam that obliterates half the woodland, instantly vaporizing any creature caught in its wake. The resulting illumination is so intense that it turns the night sky to day, compelling even Instructor Kyle to tightly shut his eyes against the brilliance. Fragments of plating and monster remains disappear entirely, leaving a path completely purged by the massive magical discharge. Perspiring heavily, the troops stare at the resulting depression in the earth, muttering in disbelief if a two-star youth is truly capable of such destruction. Despite the victory, our protagonist exhales in frustration, realizing that replicating his sister's attack purely through observation was significantly more difficult than anticipated, yielding only mediocre results. Offering the youth a gentle pat on the shoulder, the knight compliments the impressive feat and offers to handle the remaining low-level beasts. Intrigued, the teacher questions where the boy is going, observing him turn and walk further into the decaying forest. Without glancing backward, the dark-haired boy simply mentions he has a private matter to attend to and disappears into the undergrowth. Walking alone, the protagonist reflects on how, in his original timeline, the true origin of these miasma pools remained a complete mystery. However, he possesses exclusive knowledge, asserting that this entire disaster is fueled by a mystical device designed to extract negative energy from the earth. Arriving at a clearing, he identifies a massive, gnarled tree that is actively spewing the full violet smoke. Swinging his blade, he cleaves into the empty trunk with a single, precise strike. Within the cavity, a sinister ring hovers while glowing, clearly the source of all the surrounding corruption. Offering a slight smirk, he observes that his assumption was completely accurate and prepares to destroy the magical object. Abruptly, a terrified scream reverberates from the direction of the rescue team, throwing the youth into an immediate state of high alert. Eyes widening, he curses under his breath and sprints back, assuming the situation has deteriorated terribly. Sprinting at maximum velocity, our protagonist darts through the timber, smoothly leaping across the darkened terrain. Returning to his starting point, he witnesses an absolute nightmare: injured troops, and the unconscious children lying completely vulnerable on the dirt. In a state of panic, Instructor Kyle shouts that something went disastrously wrong, causing the monster population to suddenly triple in size. Clutching his weapon, the protagonist scans the area and observes a crimson wave of ravenous eyes entirely enclosing the team. Hundreds of mutated wolves, arachnids, and other hideous creatures flood from the darkness in a continuous surge they cannot realistically repel. Confronting imminent death, the soldiers' morale crumbles, and even Kyle appears to be running completely on empty. Hoping to stall for time, the youth fights with reckless abandon, hurling golden and violet lightning to annihilate anything approaching the civilians. The teacher refuses to yield as well, pushing past the front lines to deliver massive strikes against the larger beasts. Praying for a savior, one of the troops shouts in relief upon seeing the young lord return, believing their salvation has arrived. Intensely focused, the black-haired boy instructs Kyle to defend the perimeter while he creatively manages the monster horde. Shutting his eyes, the youth monitors the unnatural current of miasma being absorbed by the comatose children. Examining the flow, he comprehends that the cursed ring is utilizing the youths as organic filters to process the dark magic. Amidst the carnage, the knight shouts that the squad won't survive another 30 seconds in this absolute slaughterhouse. Grinning, our protagonist declares his intention to hijack the magical artifact's connection using his own divine core. Plunging his blade into the soil, he casts a colossal golden glyph, cutting the ring's psychic tethered to its master and commandeering the entire system. With his eyes glowing brilliantly, he utilizes the inverted energy current to locate the ring's owner through the spell's feedback loop. Hidden deep within the forest, a camouflaged operative with crimson eyes experiences the counter spell and panics upon realizing his location is compromised. Making an instantaneous decision, the protagonist commands Instructor Kyle to defend the children at all costs and retreat. Concurrently, the youth disappears into a blur, decimating a row of orcs and beasts with incredibly rapid attacks as he scales the timber. Following the magical signature, he lands heavily upon a thick branch, locking eyes with the camouflaged operative orchestrating the disaster. Distanced from the primary battle, the antagonist attempts to fade into the darkness, but his chance to escape has already passed. Leveling his radiant weapon directly at the man, the hero states he has already secured a lock and demands the coward reveal himself. Lacking alternatives, the villain leaps from the tree, hurling venomous daggers straight toward the youth. Twirling his blade like a windmill, our protagonist parries the throwing weapons in mid-air, scattering azure sparks in all directions. Touching down on the soil, the antagonist evaluates his opponent, complaining that the youth is significantly more troublesome than his dossier suggested. Maintaining his sarcastic tone, the masked operative questions whether the Dasker family's inherent corruption has already infected the heir, granting him such radar-like perception. Remaining composed, the boy retorts by demanding to know which pathetic individual commissioned this entire freak show. Chuckling, the enemy declares there is absolutely no chance he will betray his employer, prompting the protagonist to vow he will physically extract the information from him. In a vicious collision, their weapons crash together, igniting an explosion of violet and golden magic that rattles the surrounding timber. Startled by the recoil, the villain's eyes widen, utterly astounded by the immense force generated by the hybrid demonic core. Somewhat amazed by his own physical output, the black-haired youth examines his glowing weapon, confessing he still doesn't fully understand the mechanics of this insane combination. Noticing his enemy waver, the protagonist immediately assumes his combat stance, bending his knees to initiate an assault. Activating his shadow techniques, he murmurs the title of the second stance and channels concentrated crimson energy into his blade. Instantly, dozens of levitating swords forged from pure scarlet energy materialize in the atmosphere, aiming directly at the masked operative. Guiding the assault, he unleashes the barrage of crimson blades at his opponent in a massive area of effect strike. Evading frantically, the villain darts through the trees while the magical swords detonate the earth directly behind him. Grinning, the youth acknowledges that the Dasker clan's shadow abilities synergize flawlessly with his current core. Utilizing a sudden burst of acceleration, the protagonist charges alongside his levitating weapons, unleashing a massive swing aimed straight at his foe. Crossing his dual short swords, the masked man intercepts the blow, but ejects blood due to the overwhelming pressure. Utterly bewildered, the rival consults his personal diagnostic interface and observes the hero is still categorized as a pathetic level 2 threat. Analyzing the data, the operative concludes the youth's swordsmanship is vastly superior to his actual magical output. Believing he has discovered a vulnerability, the villain resolves to maintain distance and continuously harass the boy until his stamina depletes. Discharging another volley of scarlet slashes, the dark-haired boy recognizes the tactic and clicks his tongue in irritation. Gliding through the sludge, the cowardly fighter escapes the weapon's reach and begins chuckling behind his disguise. Retreating, the hero halts his assault while the antagonist prepares to unleash a barrage of long-distance magic. Ridiculing the standoff, the masked man lifts his arm and concentrates full emerald energy at his fingertips. With incredible velocity, he fires gusts of razor-sharp wind that resemble unseen blades directly at the youth. Laughing directly at the boy, the villain boasts that such a predictable frontal assault is incredibly simple to counter. However, the protagonist's crimson weapons cleave the emerald wind perfectly in two, neutralizing the magic instantly. In a flash, the hero vanishes from the villain's perception and reappears directly overhead, his blade radiating a sinister combination of gold and violet. Wearing an icy smirk, the youth mutters the title of his former divine technique, fused with his newly acquired dark aura. The magic detonates into a cyclone of illumination and darkness, introducing the completely original variation. Shadow Light Glide. Utterly stunned, the villain scarcely has a moment to react before being eviscerated by incredibly rapid strikes from multiple directions. In a state of panic, the masked man screams, identifying the taboo art, and questions how on earth the youngest sibling knows how to execute it. Desperately attempting to escape the storm of blades, the operative leaps backward, completely covered in lacerations. Refusing to grant him a moment of respite, the dark-haired youth bridges the distance, and informs his foe he is far too sluggish to escape now. With a single, immaculate swing, the blade carves across the villain's torso, painting the foliage with vital fluid. Dropping to his knees, the cowardly fighter coughs violently, sensing his vitality rapidly depleting. Staring down at his vanquished foe, the protagonist nonchalantly states he learned the technique's mechanics simply by enduring a beating from his psychotic sister. Recalling the platinum-haired girl utilizing shadow flames, he details that combining sacred energy with the Dasker family's methodology makes it incredibly simple to improvise overpowered arts instantly. Pondering aloud, the hero hypothesizes he could likely replicate every technique from the glorious lineage if he concentrated solely on divine light. However, a moment later, he shakes his head, conceding that inferior imitations cannot win battles, and the genuine potential of this hybrid power will only emerge when he engineers completely original arts. Approaching the bleeding operative, he levels his weapon directly at the man's neck and demands the identity of his employer. Spitting blood, the hitman issues a sinister chuckle and advises the youth not to become arrogant simply because he triumphed in a minor battle. Acting swiftly, the cowardly fighter bites into a capsule concealed in his mouth and ingests an incredibly dubious chemical. Eyes widening, the boy comprehends the man just consumed a potent, illicit enhancer to rapidly alter his physique. Convulsing aggressively, the opponent's frame emits an oxidized green aura, and he begins shrieking in sheer agony. In a deeply repulsive sequence, the man's musculature tears through his garments, expanding massively while his flesh transforms into a stony gray hue. His features contort into that of a literal beast, and his irises shine with a vivid, toxic crimson light, emitting a feral bellow that trembles the woodland soil. The gigantic monstrosity strikes its own chest to declare its presence. Repulsed by the transformation, the protagonist steps backward, deducing the man utilized a prohibited monster, shifting hex. Wasting zero time, the colossal brute leaps toward the hero, swinging talons as large as broadswords. Twirling his blade, the black-haired youth intercepts the initial strike, but the sheer force renders his entire arm devoid of sensation. The beast's raw strength is so absurd that the mere impact hollows out a crater directly beneath their boots. Skidding backward, the protagonist grinds his teeth, recognizing the creature's velocity and mass have increased exponentially, and his sword will inevitably shatter if he continues absorbing direct blows. Chuckling maniacally, the beast bellows, challenging the youth to demonstrate precisely how much punishment he can endure. Unleashing a barrage of strikes, the monstrosity charges ahead, destroying everything in its wake and compelling the hero to rely entirely on evasion and retreating. The creature's luminous red pupils track the boy relentlessly through the darkness, allowing him absolutely no opportunity to recover. With a single swipe of its talons, the beast launches 3 gusts of razor wind that cleanly sever the adjacent timber. Narrowly avoiding the attack, the protagonist deflects the residual wind with his weapon and observes that the encounter is becoming incredibly dangerous. Exhausted by playing defensively, the youth attempts a counterattack, but the monstrosity is far too swift and immediately unleashes another massive claw strike. Experiencing the strain, the protagonist leaps backward, utilizing violet magic to propel himself off the surrounding boulders. While airborne, he sustains a glancing blow that sends him spiraling chaotically out of control. Touching down roughly, the black-haired boy drives his sword into the soil to prevent a face, plant, and emits a pained groan. Clenching his weapon with both hands, he comprehends he cannot evade indefinitely and must expose a vulnerability immediately. Shutting his eyes momentarily, he concentrates his hybrid core, causing the blade to throb with concentrated divine and corrupted energy. Observing the hero remain stationary, the creature leaps into the air, laughing boisterously while questioning if the boy has finally surrendered. Convinced of its impending victory, the monstrosity descends like a falling star, roaring its intention to obliterate the youth's skull on the spot. Grinning, the protagonist opens his eyes, emitting a sinister radiance, and declares that the warm-up is formally concluded. Without warning, the boy's left hand erupts with a blindingly brilliant white illumination, completely dazzling the descending beast. Accompanied by a deafening fracture, the radiance manifests into an immaculate geometric magical barrier, entirely halting the creature's colossal plunge. Rebounding off its own kinetic energy, the massive monstrosity is launched backward into the sky, tumbling out of control while roaring in anger. Gripping his blade firmly, the protagonist cheers internally, realizing he successfully replicated the magical barriers from his previous existence utilizing the hybrid core. Refusing to yield any advantage, the boy flexes his knees and launches himself directly at the creature while it struggles to orient itself mid-air. Trapped without any leverage, the gigantic brute is completely exposed. Aiming his weapon toward the heavens, the hero shouts the title of his newly minted divine, demonic combat style, prepared to eliminate this pest permanently. An incandescent golden energy envelopes the youth's blade, illuminating the pitch-black environment as if it were midday. Executing a catastrophic downward slash, he invokes dual polarity single blade, bifurcating the monstrosity amidst an eruption of unadulterated light and darkness. The technique is so incredibly overpowered that it parts the clouds above and tears the adjacent trees apart solely through atmospheric pressure. Landing flawlessly, the black-haired boy exhales a sigh of relief, conceding that the magical barrier genuinely rescued him at the final moment. Examining his left hand, he appreciates the ring of absolute repulsion, an incredibly practical device that intercepts massive strikes and deflects the kinetic energy outward as a concussive wave. With his objective completed and the artifact secured, he sheathes his weapon, acknowledging it is time to sprint back to Kyle's unit before their situation completely deteriorates. In the distance, the scenario is an absolute disaster, as the instructor's squad is being overwhelmed by the infinite tide of orcs and corrupted wolves. Gasping for air and riddled with lacerations, Teacher Kyle clutches his sword with trembling hands, acknowledging his stamina is entirely depleted. Exploiting the vulnerability, a gigantic orc leaps behind the troops, preparing to crush the instructor's skull with a massive stone bludgeon. Overwhelmed by panic, the knight swears, observing the crude weapon already descending toward his head. However, mere moments before impact, the instructor perceives a resounding metallic clash and opens his eyes in utter bewilderment. Paralyzed in position, he witnesses the creature's stone bludgeon halted in mid-air, a fraction of an inch from his face, intercepted by an unseen force. As the debris settles, he comprehends that the entire monster horde is either immobilized or collapsing lifelessly, as though their summoning magic was abruptly severed. Recovering his breath, the teacher's eyes widen in shock upon hearing the protagonist casually inquire if everyone remains unharmed. Still gasping, Kyle stutters and nods in affirmation, confessing he survived solely due to some incomprehensible miracle. Approaching the squad, the boy nonchalantly states he has already resolved the insect infestation and eliminated the individual directing the creatures. Tossing the masked operative's blood-stained gloves as evidence, the youth confirms he eliminated the assailant, though he remains ignorant regarding the identity of the person who issued the contract. In the center of the open space, the children begin to awaken, coughing and weeping, finally allowing the military unit to ease their tension slightly. Observing the rescued youths, the protagonist offers a genuine smile, pleased that this entire detour proved to be entirely worthwhile. Skipping ahead to the Daskor estate, the morning is relatively peaceful, but the protagonist's mind is racing constantly. Burdened by guilt, he recalls that innocent youths nearly perished simply due to this absurd clan competition, and he is entirely opposed to that reality. Dedicated to uncovering the villain who orchestrated the ambush, the hero recalls a highly beneficial fact regarding his sister, Eve. According to the estate's rumors, she operates as the primary intelligence broker and undoubtedly knows exactly who was commanding the masked operative. Marching through the courtyard, the protagonist encounters his sibling Cease, who already rests his hand upon his hilt and commands him to halt immediately. Exerting his dominance, the blonde brother cautions that absolutely no one, including relatives, is permitted within Eve's territory without a formal summons. Confronting each other outdoors, the atmosphere becomes incredibly strained, and it is obvious the protagonist has no intention of yielding. Internally, the hero recognizes this enigmatic sister serves as his sole accelerated path to uncovering the facts. Based on the information he coerced from the servants, she absolutely possesses the identity of the person who funded that deadly trap. Exhausted by the evasive tactics, the youth activates his hybrid demonic center, steps forward, and commands his brother to step aside. Chuckling, the blonde draws his dual blades, asserting that as her personal guard, he cannot simply permit an enraged individual to barge inside. Escalating the conflict, Cease explicitly states he lacks any trust in the youngest sibling, meaning they will be forced to communicate through combat. Tightening his grip, Our protagonist accepts that peaceful negotiations are no longer an option and prepares his blade. Igniting his violet and golden energy, he shouts that he will simply have to brutalize his way past without restraining his power. Wearing a slick grin, the guard cracks his neck, entirely prepared for a physical altercation, and assumes his martial stance. In a fraction of a second, both combatants charge forward, destroying the masonry beneath their feet and crashing their weapons together with immense force. The impact generates a cloud of debris and electrical discharge, emitting a concussive wave that shakes the estate's glass panes. Resisting the protagonist's sword, the blonde demonstrates he possesses formidable physical strength despite wielding shorter weapons. Exchanging incredibly rapid blows, they cleave the atmosphere, generating razor-sharp wind currents throughout the courtyard. Gliding backward, they both establish distance to evaluate the other's combat capabilities prior to the next engagement. Refusing to grant him a moment of respite, Seize lifts an arm and casts an enormous scarlet glyph onto the earth. Shouting, "Stone Spear," he conjures a gigantic, sharpened rock directly beneath the protagonist's boots. Recognizing the snare, the boy evades laterally just in time, narrowly avoiding having his legs impaled by the stone structure. Propelling himself through the sky, the hero prepares an airborne strike, yet his sibling is already initiating another incantation. Relentlessly attacking, the blonde launches jagged stone shards resembling guided projectiles. Driving his palm into the soil, Seize activates, crushing fangs of rock blade, causing scores of stone weapons to violently erupt and devastate the courtyard. Trapped by the earthen protrusions, our protagonist questions whether his opponent is genuinely integrating terrestrial magic flawlessly with his swordsmanship. Shredding through the atmosphere, the brother navigates the stone maze with incredible velocity, prepared to slice the youth to ribbons. Interlocking blades once more, the resistance generates a shower of sparks, and the protagonist acutely registers the absurd mass backing every single strike. Utilizing his agility, the hero evades and retaliates with a lethal sequence of cuts, tracing paths of illumination and soil across the entirely ruined courtyard. Fully committed to the engagement, the blonde refuses to decrease the intensity, continually casting spells while thrusting with his dual swords. Deflecting an incoming projectile, the protagonist obliterates his sibling's defense using his radiant blade. Analyzing the duel, the boy consults his visual interface and concludes that charging blindly is suicidal, given his opponent's wildly unpredictable combat style. Interpreting the display, he observes Seize's physical attributes are ranked at an impressive 5 stars, confirming he is by no means an amateur. Piecing the information together, the black-haired youth deduces the blonde compensates for his inferior magical core by utilizing bizarre combinations of terrestrial spells and fencing techniques. Resolute in concluding this evasive skirmish, our hero declares his intention to simply overpower the situation using his own magical center. Gathering his energy, he activates Sword Dance of Light Shadow, infusing his weapon with concentrated divine and corrupted magic. The earth splinters beneath the sheer weight of the impending strike, and a vortex of energy erupts directly in the center of the courtyard. Astonished by the sheer luminosity, Seize retreats a step, internally questioning whether this terrifying entity is truly his fragile younger sibling. Sensing the terrain vibrate, the blonde prepares to absorb the collision, planting his boots firmly into the shattered masonry. Responding rapidly, the brother initiates the dark lightning technique, causing his dual blades to crackle with fierce crimson electricity. Executing a swift sprint, he announces the instant black bolt, maneuver and disappears into the ether like a burst of light. Concentrating intensely, the protagonist identifies the technique, recalling instructor Kyle's rapid tutorial regarding the clan's underhanded combat methods. Within the boy's memory, the mentor details that the lightning technique revolves around executing unavoidable strikes utilizing sheer velocity. Taunting him, the blonde materializes, ricocheting off unseen barriers while commending the youngest sibling for understanding his family's history. However, immediately afterward, he offers a sinister grin and cautions that possessing theoretical knowledge and actually surviving the strike are two entirely separate matters. Confronting the threat directly, our hero roars, absorbing the assault head-on without retreating a single inch. Rotating his crimson electric blades, Seize attacks like a deadly bolt of lightning, targeting the youth's neck directly. The wake of corrupted energy utterly annihilates the environment, carving a linear path of absolute devastation. At the absolute final fraction of a second, the protagonist drives his golden weapon into the scarlet electricity, triggering an explosion that blinds all observers. Roaring with absolute maximum effort, the hero attempts to repel the electrical surge, channeling every single drop of his hybrid core into the defensive maneuver. However, the sheer kinetic force from the sibling's strike is simply too overwhelming, and a concussive wave propels the boy backward, his footwear carving deep grooves into the stone. The ultimate detonation scatters fragments universally, stirring up an enormous veil of dust within the courtyard. As the particulate matter dissipates slightly, the shattered monuments are visible across the area, and absolute quiet dominates the space. Skidding over the terrain, our protagonist expectorates a small amount of blood, feeling his musculature ache from the savage collision. Gasping heavily, he clutches his trembling weapon and observes a superficial laceration on his arm. Despite defending with all his available strength, the blonde touches down gracefully on the opposite side, yet he appears similarly exhausted, indicating the maneuver consumed a massive portion of his stamina. Irritated, the hero clicks his tongue, confessing that the sword dance of light and shadow completely failed to intercept that direct assault. Evaluating the failure, he deduces that replicated techniques possess a severe damage ceiling when compared to the authentic versions. Processing rapidly, he concludes he must cease depending on imitations and swiftly engineer his own authentic technique utilizing the hybrid core, or he faces certain defeat in their next encounter. Abruptly, a composed, authoritative voice resonates, demanding both combatants cease this embarrassing spectacle immediately. Emerging from the estate clad in somber attire, Sister Eve presents herself with an expression of utter boredom, putting an end to the sibling skirmish. Transitioning to the opulent study, the atmosphere is incredibly fraught as the individuals occupy luxurious seating. Bypassing pleasantries, the young woman crosses her legs and inquires what on earth the altercation outside was meant to accomplish. Justifying his actions, the blonde details that the youngest arrived seeking conflict, and in his capacity as a guard, he was obligated to prevent a forced entry. Not buying that excuse, the proto fires back, asking why anyone in the Dasker family would even need a bodyguard in the first place. Taking a sip of her tea, Sister Eve calmly replies that she has zero talent for physical fighting and that her brain is her actual weapon. Confused by the mess, Blonde C's asks what the kid actually wants with their sister to go kicking doors down. Eve takes over, confirming the boy is here to find out who hired that squad of assassins in the woods. Surprised, our hero's eyes go wide, asking how she already knows about the ambush when he literally just got back. Flashing a slightly arrogant smile, the girl claims there's very little on this planet she doesn't know about. Putting her teacup down, she mentions she'd love to drop the intel for free since he's her cute little brother. But in the Dasker family, everything has a price. Knowing the house rules, the dark-haired youth nods and asks straight up what she wants for the info. Building the hype, the sister asks if the kid has ever heard of a weird place called the Infinite Library. She explains it's a colossal maze. Nobody knows how big it actually is, and the folks who go too deep never wake up. Because of the insane knowledge locked inside, scholars and explorers built a whole town around the library's entrances just to manage the research. Getting to business, Eve orders the hero to go into that cursed hole and fetch a legendary book called the Tome of Eternal Depths. Eyes wide, the boy recognizes the name immediately, remembering that this is the exact book that completely changed magic theory in his past life. He knows for a fact that the spells in this book saved thousands of soldiers during the war against the Red Invaders. Thinking fast, the proto figures if he grabs this book right now, a whole decade before the world ends, he can totally change humanity's future. Without hesitating, our hero puts on a serious face and agrees to grab the book for her. Sealing the deal, Eve flashes a tiny smile, confirming their shady little contract. A while later, a noisy carriage rattles over the stone roads heading to their new destination. Chilling with the maid, the MC looks out the window, scouting the route while the servant looks a bit carsick. Pulling into the town of Arcanum, the youth sees massive buildings and a place buzzing with energy and mercenary fighters. As soon as he hops out, he immediately feels the heavy vibe of an explorer's hub. The maid explains that the Infinite Library maze is so confusing that anyone who walks in without a guide ends up starving to death in there. Walking through the busy streets, the hero passes by bounty hunters and some really weird mages. He heads straight for a shady alley, looking for a very specific broker in this part of town. Stopping in front of an old building with funky architecture, the boy checks out the storefront. Inside, the place looks like an abandoned pawn shop, completely covered in dust and cobwebs. A tired-looking guy behind the counter asks what the customers want. Suddenly, the scene cuts back to Eva's office, where she's still sipping tea, but now with Brother Scar. With a sarcastic smirk, The redhead says he wants to ask a few questions about little No. Showing zero reaction, the sister takes another sip, looking like she already knew this guy was going to be a headache. Sighing, the girl points out it's pretty rare for the redhead to actually visit her private office. Smirking back, he gives a crooked smile and says he needs to borrow his sister's brains and resources for a bit. Sitting down, Scar asks where bodyguard C's is, wondering why the door was left wide open. Totally chill, Eve replies that Dad sent the blonde out on an urgent errand, so he had to leave in a hurry. The redhead's grin gets bigger, realizing his sister is all alone and unguarded right now. Keeping her cool, the girl warns him she's got some very capable employees managing the shadows, so she's definitely not helpless. Mocking her, the brother claims he expected that kind of attitude from her and demands the intel on the youngest kid right now. Staring at his own hands, the redhead says he wants to know where the brat got enough juice to go toe-to-toe with Julia right after waking up from poison. Clenching his fist, he slams the desk, demanding the secret behind that ridiculous power. He even throws it in her face that the runt beat the pro assassins he hired himself. Putting her cup down gently, Eve replies dryly that, unfortunately, she can't help him out with that. Sternly, she explains that selling info of that level would completely break the balance of the succession war. Then she lays down the law as an info broker. She has to treat all the siblings equally so she doesn't end up with a knife in her back while she sleeps. Furious, the redhead stands up, asking if she's seriously refusing to play ball with him. Without blinking, the sister stares him down and asks if he really thinks he has enough cash or clout to make her risk her own neck in a messy game like this. Laughing like a psycho, Scar claims she'll find out real soon what kind of payment he's bringing to the table. Right then, a shadowy figure with glowing red eyes pops up behind the girl, ready to strike. Meanwhile, in Arcanum, the Prota stares at the massive infinite library building in the distance. Walking the streets, he ignores the pushy merchants and stays locked on his goal. Turning the corner of a sketchy alley, he finds the exact shop the maid recommended. Pushing the heavy door, the bell rings, and he gets a whiff of mold and ancient magic in the air. Muttering to himself, the kid says he finally made it, and gets a weird wave of nostalgia from his past life. From the back of the messy shop, a sloppy-looking guy walks out, saying they're closed, and tells the customer to bounce. Scanning his system HUD, the MC confirms the guy's name is Osrek and quickly says he's not here to buy magic junk. He wants to hire the guy as a maze guide. Losing patience, the shopkeeper rejects the job, claiming he doesn't guide people into the deep zones anymore. Questioning his rep, the hero asks if he isn't the guy who knows the entire maze better than the back of his hand. Annoyed, the man yells, telling the kid to stop bugging him and get out. Confused by the hard no, the MC asks straight up why the best guide in town suddenly quit his day job. Slapping the counter, the shopkeeper snaps that it's a personal issue and a random kid can't help him anyway. Noticing the look of pure despair on the guy's face, the boy stays quiet, realizing this goes pretty deep. Dropping his head, shopkeeper Osrek apologizes for losing his cool, admitting his mental state has been a mess lately. Before the Prota can answer, the shop bell rings again, breaking the heavy tension in the room. As the door opens, heavy boots step on the floor, and a platinum-haired woman walks in oozing arrogance. Eyes wide, the hero recognizes his sister Julia, who kicks off the conversation by sarcastically asking if her baby brother is doing well. Curious, the kid asks if she's stalking him, but the blonde casually says she just spotted him while running an errand and tagged along out of pure curiosity. Stunned, the shopkeeper jumps and screams, asking if she's the famous Julia from the cursed Dasker family. Pointing at the MC, she confirms it and announces the kid next to her is also one of the monsters from their family tree. Hearing that, Osrek's face totally changes, and he promises to take the guide job if the blonde joins their party for the maze run. Confused, the hero questions the sudden change of heart and figures the guy's personal issue must involve monsters. Waving them over, the shopkeeper tells them to follow him to the back of the rundown store. In a dark room, there's a woman lying on a bed, looking as pale as a corpse. The guy explains that a month ago, his partner got cursed by some freak monster down in the deep zones of the library. In his mind, he flashes back to a bizarre beast wrapped in red energy and shadows. The curse puts the victim into a deep coma that slowly eats away their life until their heart just stops. Checking the woman out, the blonde confirms the only way to break the hex is to kill the monster that cast it, and the shopkeeper cries, saying every merc he hired just got slaftered in the maze. Without wasting time, the blonde agrees to go into the maze to save the guy's partner, but immediately throws down a condition. Pointing at our MC, she warns that the kid absolutely has to join the monster hunt with her. Curious about the runt's power, she admits her real goal is to watch how the kid fights up close. Seeing her attitude, the youth realizes his older sister still has major doubts about his actual strength. Chill about the challenge, our hero agrees to the deal and tells the shopkeeper to pack their supplies. Pumped about the chance to save his partner, the guy thumps his chest and promises to navigate them flawlessly. Standing right in front of the Infinite Library's colossal building, the trio gets ready to step into the hunter's nest. On the walk over, the proto probes a bit, asking what she actually meant by that secret comment back at the shop. Thinking back to their fight in the yard, the woman explains she felt some weird energy holding her power back, and it definitely wasn't just his demon core. Flashing a sharp smile, the blonde warns that the maze is the perfect stage for the kid to show off whatever trick he's hiding. Trying to lighten the mood, the guide shows up carrying a ton of bags and apologizes for the delay. Cutting to the chase, our hero rounds up the squad, and they start heading for the building's entrance. Crossing the lobby gates, they walk past a bunch of mercenaries gearing up to dive into the deep zones. Carrying the heavy bags, the guide notes that his life is literally in the hands of the sibling duo now. Off to the side, some explorers gossip, pointing at the guide and betting his group is definitely the next one to wipe. Locked on the goal, the trio stands before the library's massive doors, ready for whatever is on the other side. Putting his hands on the cold stone, the merchant pushes the heavy doors open, unlocking the maze. Immediately, a blue light floods the area, wrapping the whole team in a mystical teleport spell. Traveling through space, the group gets yanked hard into the insane interior of the building. Touching down inside, they're greeted by bookshelves the size of skyscrapers stretching endlessly into the distance. Blown away by the scale of the place, the blonde admits that without a guide, they'd easily die lost in this maze. Looking at floating walkways and endless halls, it's pretty clear this whole place is a lethal puzzle. Checking out the scenery, our hero's eyes widen when he spots a really creepy detail on the walls. Giant murals show the ancient war against the invader coalition that wrecked his world in the past. Putting the pieces together quickly, the kid realizes this library is directly connected to the Cataclysm monsters. His mind flashes to bloody images of the red giants slaughtering humanity without mercy. Flashing a confident smile, the MC figures he might find some weak spot here to beat those freaks in the future. Snapping back to reality, he remembers the main goal is still grabbing the Tome of Eternal Depths for Sister Eve. Heading down the massive halls, the guide starts explaining how the library's bizarre floor system works. Checking his mental map, the merchant warns that the restricted book they want only spawns around the 20th floor. Frowning, the hero points out that making it to floor 20 is a flex almost nobody has pulled off yet. Walking across the dark tiles, they spot a blue magic circle glowing on the floor. Step by step, the team walks up to the teleport spell that connects the maze's levels. Right as they're about to jump, a squad of giant, axe-wielding orcs spawns in front of the circle to block them. Shaking with fear, the guide warns that monsters always camp the warp zones and asks if the siblings can handle it. Drawing his sword casually, our proto declares this isn't even a speed bump. With a brutal dash, the kid chops the shielded orc in half with one hit, splashing hybrid light across the floor. Not holding back, the blonde also draws her blade and starts slicing the air around the creatures. In a matter of seconds, the heavy beasts drop dead, chopped to pieces before they even realize what hit them. Totally traumatized by how aggressive these two are, the guide gulps while the sister tells him to pick up the pace immediately. Now on the 10th floor, the group walks calmly down some darker, rounded hallways. Lugging the huge bags, the merchant leads the way, sweating bullets but still guiding the Dasker monsters. Passing through a stone arch, they hit another transition zone in the maze. Right away, they see another massive magic circle glowing in the middle of a dark room. Standing in front of the light, the team takes a deep breath and gets ready to dive even deeper into the hole. Instantly, the spell swallows the trio, launching them down into the library's heavy depths. A white flash pops, blinding everyone for a quick second. Blinking to adjust his eyes, the proto instantly goes on high alert, noticing the temperature dropping like a rock. Landing in a huge room, the guide warns that they finally hit the plaza that leads to the fabled 20th floor. Pointing into the dark, the merchant's voice shakes as he says the floor boss is sitting right over there. Moving slowly, the team gets closer to the middle of the plaza, where the shadows seem to actually be alive. Suddenly, the symbols on the floor start flashing, reacting to the threat waking up. Out of nowhere, Dark, thorny branches start shooting out of the floor, forming a freakish monster, rocking glowing red eyes on its solid trunk. An imposing ancient Trent spawns and roars at the group. Completely losing it, the guide screams that last time he was here, this thing was just a normal wood monster, not this mutant freak. Panicking, the guy warns that killing an A-rank beast like this takes a massive raid party of elite hunters, not just 2 people. Laughing at the guide's freak out, the blonde sneers, asking why they'd need more people, gripping her sword like a pro. The woman promises she's more than enough to turn that demonic tree into kindling all by herself. With a violent burst of speed, the sister takes off like a missile straight at the mutant. Sensing danger, the mutant tree shoots dozens of sharp vines like spears at the girl. Nimble as an expert, the blonde chops the razor-sharp branches in mid-air without even slowing down. Using the branches she just cut as stepping stones, the woman jumps right over the beast's colossal body. Spinning her sword like a blender, she lands a hit on the treant's trunk, sending dark splinters flying everywhere. Aiming for the weak spot, she drives her attack straight at the red center eye, trying to blind the wooden freak. Landing on the floor with a skid, the woman clicks her tongue, complaining that the creature's armor is ridiculously tough. Sweating buckets, the guide yells that the branches are hard as steel, and they desperately need a fire mage right now. Capitalizing on her slip-up, the monster shoots a massive wave of roots that wrap around the blonde, trapping her by surprise. In milliseconds, the wooden bindings cover the girl almost up to her neck, squeezing her like a giant snake. Thinking it won the fight, the cursed tree lets out a deafening victory roar. In the middle of the dark room, seeing his partner caught, our hero shouts tensely, ready to jump in and chop a monster salad. But inside her wooden trap, the woman flashes a maniacal smile, her eyes sparkling with pure hype. Muttering the 5th form of the dark flame style, the room's temperature spikes to an insane degree. In a burst of dark fire, she melts the roots and emerges wearing the dark flame armor, looking like a demon straight out of hell. Impressed, the Proto takes a step back, shocked that she can use pure fire magic as a shield without burning her own skin. Wrapped it in crimson energy and rocking flaming armor, the sister throws her arms out, calling on the first offensive form, ready to burn the Trent to the ground. Channeling dark power into her blade, the girl charges through the air, screaming, "Dark flame sword dance," with psycho-level aggression. Feeling the extreme heat, the cursed tree panics and tries to shoot every sharp root it has to block the attack. Smiling like a demon, the blonde slices through the massive pile of wood like it's shredded paper, scattering red fire everywhere. With a quick leap, she slams her flaming sword directly into the mutant's solid trunk. The hit is so brutal it cracks the Trent's thick bark and starts cooking the monster from the inside out. Letting out a battle cry, she pushes the blade deeper, twisting her body to maximize the damage. A cross-shaped explosion of fire rips through the monster's body, completely lighting up the dark room. The impact is so massive it destroys the red eye in the center of the trunk, making the tree scream in agony. Landing casually on the other side of the beast, the woman shrugs, bragging that her sword doesn't stop for any garbage armor. But the guide frantically yells that the fight isn't over and points at the ruined pile of wood. Out of nowhere, a skinny branch pops out of the ground and grabs the girl's ankle in a flash. Before she can chop the vine, dozens of other roots shoot up and completely trap her body again. Making fun of her own mess, the blonde admits plant monsters are annoying because they regen way too fast if you don't burn every single piece. Watching from a distance, the Proto gulps as he sees his sister getting squeezed by a ball of roots that just keeps getting bigger. Showing zero panic, she shouts from inside that she's triggering her style's 3rd form. Seeing things go south, our hero grabs the guide's arm and yells for the guy to run the other way. Freaking out, the merchant doesn't understand what's happening, but follows the kid as he's dragged away while the ground shakes. Inside the wooden trap, the blonde opens her eyes, glowing like hot coals, and unleashes the full flow of her demon core. Shouting dark flame explosive burial, she detonates her own fire armor in an absolutely insane suicide move. A colossal pillar of dark and red flame swallows the Trent whole, vaporizing the wood all the way down to the base. The shockwave from the blast sweeps the room, sending rocks and ash flying, forcing the Proto to block with his sword so he doesn't get roasted. When the smoke clears, the kid looks at the wreckage and asks his sister if she was trying to burn down the entire floor. Walking out of the ash-covered crater without a single scratch, the blonde struts with total arrogance. Fixing her hair like nothing happened, she walks over to the group and asks in a bored voice if they can move on now. Totally shell-shocked and trembling, The guide stammers that it's impossible for one person to cause that level of disaster and walk away fine. Analyzing the situation, our hero mentally confirms that his sister is a literal monster when it comes to raw offense. But the kid notices her weak spot, realizing her fire moves burn a ridiculous amount of energy, and she wouldn't last long in a war of attrition. After the Trent craziness, the team finally hits the famous 20th floor, walking down halls covered in dust and webs. Searching through some old shelves, the kid suddenly dashes forward, eyes wide, seeing exactly what he came for. Quietly celebrating, the Prota pulls the Tome of Eternal Depths from the shelf, hyped that he actually found the artifact. Super relieved, the merchant cheers, remembering that this 20th floor is exactly where he ran into the cursed monster that got his partner. Confirming the theory, the guide explains that monsters don't respawn in this transition area, which is how he made it this far last time without being a pro hunter. Focused on finding the mutant, the trio pushes through the library shelves, keeping their guard up. Creeping through the shadows, they stumble upon the floor boss's plaza, where the mystery monster is already waiting. Checking the beast from a distance, the hero notices something off about its silhouette and braces for impact. Looking at the armored humanoid shape, the Prota gets a chill down his spine and instantly recognizes the threat. He drops the book on a random shelf and draws his sword immediately. The kid's eyes go wide in panic as he realizes just how bad this is. Also drawing her sword, the blonde gets into a fighting stance next to her brother, while the guide cowers behind them. Facing away from the group, the massive undead knight with dark armor and a giant blade spots the intruders. Shaking and tearing up, the merchant points his finger and curses the damned monster that ruined his partner's life. With a deadly glare, the Prota orders the guide to stay back and warns his sister that playtime is over. They need to crush this thing fast. Feeling the beast's insane pressure, the hero yells, telling the blonde to fall back right now. Ignoring her little brother's warning, the girl smirks and says she'll take the front line and turn the creature to dust. In an insane dash, the night monster spins its body with physics, defying speed and attacks before she can. With a colossal swing, the undead fires a wave of dark, cutting energy straight at the girl. Caught completely off guard, the blonde barely has time to cross her sword to block the blast of demonic wind. The impact is so brutal it cracks the floor, tearing open a massive trench right behind her. Sliding for meters, the sister kicks up a dust cloud, complaining that getting pushed back by raw strength was not part of the plan. Dropping to one knee to keep from falling over, the woman mentally admits that a long fight with this thing is going to be trouble. Not giving them a break, the monster keeps the pressure on, throwing an aerial stab aimed right at her chest. In the blink of an eye, the opponent's giant blade comes down wrapped in dark energy, ready to split the blonde in half. Dodging on pure reflex, she rolls away, feeling the wind pressure slice her cheek. Facing it head-on, the girl counters with a strike coated in dark fire, and both swords clash, throwing sparks. The force of the collision creates a storm of dark and crimson energy, trashing the bookshelves around them. Watching from afar, the Prota gulps, realizing he barely tracked the speed of that first attack. Shocked, the kid wonders how the monster just tanked his sister's explosive hit without taking any damage. Furious that she got blocked, the blonde jumps back and preps her next move, spinning her sword in the air. Summoning red magic symbols under her foot, she shouts the second form of the dark flames and calls up a solid pillar of fire. Yelling, "Dark Flame Vortex!" a tornado of dark fire swallows the undead knight, sucking him into the center of the blast. Seeing the monster trapped in the fire, the guide cheers from his hiding spot, thinking the tide just turned in their favor. But the Prota gets a terrible feeling and yells at the girl not to drop her guard for a second. From the center of the red tornado, the knight's giant blade cuts the flames like smoke and comes crashing down at her. Flashing a confident smile, the blonde figures the beast's slow attack is the perfect opening and rushes in to counter. With her blade wrapped in dense demonic core energy, she aims for a gap in the rival's armor to end the fight. But when her sword connects, her eyes go wide as a bizarre recoil shoots right up her arm. Instead of slicing, her sword just clangs and slides off the monster's body without leaving a single scratch. Instinctively jumping back, she lets out a groan, feeling her wrist pop from the raw impact. Frozen, the hero thinks to himself that it's impossible for the beast's armor to tank the heaviest shadow hit like that. Breathing hard, the girl just stands there looking at her sword, which literally chipped just from hitting the undead. Showing zero emotion and looking bored, the monster pops its helmet open, revealing a toxic, corrupted green light inside. Confused, the blonde notices her left arm is covered in gross green energy, and she's losing feeling in it. Out of nowhere, the knight fires a massive blast of toxic green energy straight from its helmet at point-blank range. Jumping fast, our hero grabs his sister by the waist and rolls them out of the lethal danger zone. The green beam grazes past and hits the maze wall, carving out a massive hole and melting the rock with acid that evaporates into the air. Looking at his injured sister, our prota promises he'll help, but warns her to stay away from the monster's cursed arm. Right then, the beast extends its arm, which stretches out like a whip of corrupted sludge, reeking of cursed energy. The blonde yells that with this toxic arm, she won't be able to charge up enough energy for a finisher. Changing the game plan, the kid asks his sister for a massive favor in the middle of this bloodbath. Watching the undead knight, he notices the beast is charging up an attack of pure energy in its chest. The prota asks her to pull off that suicide explosion move that almost wiped them both out back in the yard. Without hesitation, the blonde accepts the risk and charges in, cutting the air with crazy speed. In an explosion of power, she spins her sword, wrapping the area in dark flames that force the monster to back off, while his sister distracts the beast. The dark-haired youth focuses all his core energy into his personal sword dance of light and shadow. Combining both attacks, they trap the undead in a circle of absolute destruction. The flash from the hit lights up the entire floor, blinding the guide who's hiding behind a shelf. In a massive display, the dark flames and golden lightning completely wreck the knight's defenses. The blonde lands on her feet next to her brother, while the beast's armor starts cracking all over. Through the smoke, both siblings get ready to delete this trash for good, but the monster lets out a spine-chilling roar, and its armor starts glowing with a creepy violet light. Amazed by its durability, the prota mutters that this is definitely not a normal mob. Faster than anyone expected, the undead swings a massive circular slash with its dark blade. The blonde jumps back, barely dodging it as the floor gets sliced completely in half. Not letting up, the knight charges again, trying to skewer the girl while her arm is paralyzed. But the prota catches the attack with his hand wrapped in pure light, saving his sister at the very last millisecond. Yelling for her to dodge, the kid tanks the hit straight on his hybrid energy shield. Instantly, the sister fires up the second dark flame form, creating a massive fire spear. The hit drops the knight to its knees, making its armor crack like glass. Realizing the weak spot is in the chest, the monster emits a green glow from inside its armor. The blonde screams her brother's name so he doesn't miss the perfect opening she just made. With his core pulsing, the prota shifts into the holy demonic style, waking up a brand new divine energy. Raising his sword, which now shines like a star, he calls out the twin polar blade. Coming down fast, he jams the sword straight into the monster's chest, shattering the emerald core. The undead stops moving instantly, letting out a final breath of ancient metal. The light punches through the beast's armor, vaporizing everything from the chest down as it turns to dust. With the beast defeated, the prota drops to his knees, totally exhausted as his energy goes back to normal. Checking out the mess, the kid notes that the beast's power level was way higher than they expected. The platinum-haired sister throws her sword on the ground and releases a dark flame vortex to burn away the monster's leftover bits. She turns to her brother, admitting that the effort was enough to clear the debt she owed him. Looking at the dead body, the prota thinks about how even his sister's strongest attack couldn't scratch that armor before they teamed up. Wondering if running away was their only other option, he checks out what's left of the arena. Silence takes over the floor again as the two siblings stare at each other in the rubble. The blonde points out that having two monsters like them in the same bloodline is a guaranteed recipe for disaster. The prota hears a weird voice in his head, but ignores it to focus on the woman's injured arm. Standing up slowly, the hero realizes he's surrounded by a super bright white light that just popped up out of nowhere. The whole scenery changes completely, and crazy, mixed golden energy is floating everywhere. Yelling into the empty space, he asks who's there and where he just ended up after the fight. An intense light appears in the middle of the room, and the prota realizes that if he dies here, it's game over. The undead knight is gone for good as the system pings a critical class evolution notification. The blonde pops out of the flash, asking what the hell he's doing just standing there like a statue. A screen pops up in the prota's vision, confirming the hair's evolution and unlocking the divine core system. With shaking hands, he calls on the second form of the divine style, something he's never even seen before. The sword starts radiating a golden power that makes the library's air literally vibrate. Whispering, "Twin Sky Tier," He feels the ancient energy flowing through his new body's veins. In an explosion of golden light, he fires a beam that splits reality right in front of him. The power is so insane that even time seems to freeze for a second. Smiling, the dark-haired youth realizes this is the true power of the sacred core he's been after. Overflowing with energy, he swears he's going to pay back everyone who tried to kill him. The golden power pushes forward, wiping out the maze's shadows and clearing the path to the next floor. A system prompt chimes in front of him, confirming his evolution request was approved. Looking at the sword, he realizes he just absorbed the consciousness of the power's old owner. The blade gives off such an aura of dominance that even the blonde takes a step back. A golden spirit pops up, floating above him and acting like absolute royalty. With a serious voice, the man introduces himself as Zex Valmuth, the original owner of the divine core. The Proto just stands there and asks who this guy is that knows all about his hidden power. Zex explains that the divine and demonic cores are actually two broken halves of the exact same source. The spirit says that back in the Age of Gods, humanity was given the power to fight the invaders from outer space. But after the war, humans just started slaughtering each other over politics. He reveals that the factions, scared of losing control, assassinated the original core holders. The power got split in two, creating the broken demonic and divine cores that exist today. The spirit explains that originally they were just one thing, which is why the Proto managed to fuse them. Taking the chance, the dark-haired youth asks if he could have beaten the invaders if humans hadn't screwed him over. With a look of disgust, Zex swears that with the full core, they would have wiped the invaders off the map without even breaking a sweat. The spirit looks at the kid and claims that with this new combined power, he actually has a shot at fixing the tragic future. But he warns that the Proto has to beat strong enemies to grind the system up to max level. With his eyes shining, our hero agrees on the spot, accepting the challenge. Zex laughs, happy, and says he's going to teach him something super basic to kick off the training. He tells the kid to show him how he handles the garbage mob trying to sneak up behind him. In an explosion of golden light, the Proto spins and fires a beam of pure energy that makes the whole landscape shake. The hit connects with a shadow monster trying to jump the group, blowing the beast into 1,000 pieces in a total flex of dominance. With his eyes glowing deep purple, the Proto decides he's finally going to slice this monster in half. Jumping like a bullet, he smashes the golden energy into the undead, creating a shockwave that shatters the floor. Spinning mid-air, our hero triggers the twin sky variation, controlling blades of light around his body. The system flashes in his vision, explaining that the technique uses light to create both cutting attacks and solid shields. In a crazy combo, he fires 6 swords of pure energy that fly around the creature like drones. Watching this, Osrek the guide is absolutely dumbfounded, wondering how the kid managed to hack off the beast's limb using just the room's lighting. The monster tries to fight back with its dark claws, but the light blades block everything, creating a flawless barrier. Taking advantage of the open guard, the dark-haired youth moves in, sword in hand, for a direct stab to the core. Flashing a winner's smile, he aims his palm at the beast, which is completely boxed in by golden light. The combined attack of the 6 lights punches through the knight's armor like it's tissue paper. Roaring in pain, the undead tries to hold the swords back, but the holy power just eats its dark energy. For the final hit, the hero shoots a massive blast straight through the creature's helmet, vaporizing the rest of the metal. The monster's armor collapses into twisted iron chunks and smoke as the enemy turns to dust. Seeing the fight is over, the Proto puts his sword away, tired but with a victorious gleam in his eye. The blonde walks up behind him, still mind blown by the move that literally vacuumed up all the evil energy in the room. Screaming for him to dodge, the sister notices the monster has one last trick before it dies. A burst of toxic green energy explodes from the knight's remains, shooting straight at them. Without even thinking, our Proto throws up a gold shield that bounces the acid wave away. The toxic energy crashes into the maze walls, melting the rock with a nasty sizzling sound. Moving fast, the blonde cuts the rest of the beam with her own sword, protecting the guide who was hiding behind her. The shockwave from the blast shakes the entire floor, but the hero stands his ground. Crossing his arms, he lets the golden energy fade slowly while the monster finally stops glowing. Eyes wide, the sister points out the kid walked out of that brutal attack without a single scratch. Checking the results, the dark-haired youth puts his blades away, realizing he just cleared the first hurdle of this journey. They stand side by side as the golden glow lights up the dark hallway of the infinite library. The leftover energy in the air gets sucked up by the kid's marks, which start glowing again. Feeling his body react, he notices the hair class is actually evolving his own energy. A system ping tells him his divine core leveled up to 2, and he just unlocked the 5 color eyes ability. Checking the notification, the kid sees that Zex hit a message in the system rules. The system warns him that this is the path to level up and tells him to use his new power smartly. Reading the screen, the Proto gets that turning into a monster in a fight is the only way to unlock new skills. Walking over, the guide asks if the monster is actually dead or if it's going to jump scare them again. Stating the obvious, the dark-haired youth points at the dust pile, promising the bug is totally nuked. The blonde puts her sword away, noticing the heavy air in the library feels lighter and the curse is gone. With tears in his eyes, Ozrek thanks them both and says he needs to run back and save his partner right now. Watching the guide leave, the sister walks up to her brother, studying the way he walks, not beating around the bush. She asks where exactly he learned to use such a creepy sword style. The kid tries to change the subject, but the blonde puts on a serious face and demands the truth, since she knows every style in the book. She explains there are a lot of branches, but the way he handles the dark core is just way too weird. The girl lists the names of the speed and offense focused moves he was just spamming. She names the shadow styles and the void despair like the kid has a master's degree in all of it. But she points out that his specific style isn't in any of the textbooks the family teaches. Cornered, the Proto wonders how she's so observant and what kind of lie he can spin to get her to shut up. The blonde stares right into his soul, waiting for an answer that doesn't come from a textbook. Giving a little smile, the youth cuts the conversation off and tells her to just drop it already. The blonde warns that she's going to beat the truth out of him when it's time for them to fight to the death in the Succession War. Walking out of the maze, they see the guide already coming back holding the book for the deal with Eve. Riding back to the fortress, the sun shines on the trio's faces. Suddenly, a carriage crash stops them, and Brother C's runs up yelling that Eve got kidnapped. The blonde explains that Scar raided the mansion while he was gone, and took their sister hostage for intel. It's pretty obvious the redhead plans to torture Eve to force her to spill the beans about No. With his eyes glowing deep purple, the Proto grits his teeth, promising Scar is going to pay a massive price for this. He looks at C's and the guide, asking if they're ready to throw down with the third hair. The dark-haired youth warns he's not just going to ask for an apology, he's going to return the damage Scar caused twofold. Oozing pure spite, he announces it's time for some entirely one-sided payback. The blonde agrees to join the squad to fix his own mistake of leaving his sister unprotected. The Proto cuts him off, saying he doesn't have time to gather an army and they're launching the raid right now. Ordering the bodyguard to lock down their mansion, the kid draws his sword, ready for war. Tutor Kyle promises he'll guard the fortress with his life while they handle the problem. With a nod, the dark-haired youth gives the final order, and the squad heads straight for the enemy's turf. In the carriage, the Proto and C's ride towards Scar's place with total murder in their eyes. The wind howls as they ride hard through the main roads of the Daskur territory. The kid notices that C's is actually way more talented as a bodyguard than he thought, and isn't going to fold easily. He asks his brother why he's so obsessed with protecting Eve, and the blonde admits it's a really old loyalty thing. The blonde reveals his demon core isn't that strong, so he had to focus entirely on defense techniques. Thinking about his weak spots, the blonde admits the only way to cover his lack of power was just brutal, raw training. He thinks back to the secret martial arts he learned, just to protect the people he cares about. Watching his brother, the Proto realizes C's is one of the rare family members who doesn't just want to murder everyone else. The blonde yells that he'll protect Eve no matter what happens on this rescue op. Reaching the rival mansion's gate, they hop off the mounts with their weapons already drawn. The dark-haired youth warns he has absolutely zero mercy for Scar's guards. With a single kick, he smashes the rival's front gate, scaring the crap out of the staff. The Proto's purple energy explodes, lighting up the entrance with a terrifying aura. He marches in, trashing statues and the barricades protecting Scar's yard. Flexing his power, the hero charges the redhead's private security, destroying anything in his path. Instantly, our Proto and the blonde break into the enemy base, staring down a platoon of hitmen. Right then, the bodyguard warns that this is Scar's elite coward squad. Without wasting time, the enemies jump off the walls, proving they actually know what they're doing. Mocking them, the camo-wearing commander calls them both idiots for charging into a frontal assault. Furious, our kid unleashes his purple aura and demands they bring the redhead out right now, because he doesn't have time for trash. Finding the arrogance funny, the masked guy points out the brat hasn't noticed how badly outnumbered they are. Exactly at that second, the prota's pure death glare makes one of the lackeys blindly rush him, but the counter is lightning fast, and the hero runs the grunt through the chest with a perfect, electricity-coated strike. Right after, he lands a brutal kick that sends another hitman flying. Mad at the disrespect, the commander points his sword, promising zero mercy for anyone challenging the boss of the house. Ignoring the threat, our kid turns into a purple blur, tearing through the enemy lines. Sparks explode everywhere as his sword drops lackey after lackey. In the middle of the yard, it's an absolute bloodbath as the two brothers pulverize the assassins. Soon, the prota finds himself locked in a heavy sword clash with the commander. Despite the brute force, the army of grunts keeps swarming them, not giving them a second to breathe. Demanding some personal space, Blonde Seas chops a lackey in half, proving he can cause some damage too. Setting the stage, the bodyguard activates the third form of the Dark Thunder style, charging blue lightning into his sword. With a deafening boom, the electric flash sweeps the enemies in an insane storm. After the blast, you can see dozens of grunts launched into the air, totally fried. Screams of pain echo through the yard, confirming the attack was absolutely devastating. Full of swagger, the partner challenges the whole army to a fistfight, thumping his chest. With a smirk, our prota realizes he can totally leave the rear guard to the blonde. That's when the masked commander charges in furious, yelling at the kid not to underestimate the squad by looking away. Super agile, the hero dodges the dirty slash in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, a massive red magic circle pops up in the air, meaning the rival just triggered a special skill. Stepping on ground soaked in vital fluid, the prota wonders what kind of weird spell this is. From the shadows, the assassin launches an incredible sneak attack. Sounding like a psycho, the enemy warns that this hidden technique was made specifically to kill Dasker family members. With his eyes narrowed, the kid focuses completely on the blade aiming to take his head off. The system HUD makes it obvious the coward is using a totally broken level 5 art. To counter, our boy tries to summon the second divine form into his sword, but the blade just shoots out a few purple sparks and completely dies. Seeing it fail, he grits his teeth, feeling that his energy is completely blocked. Without a shield, the hero takes a purple blast to the chest and gets launched backward, sliding across the dirt. Checking his own body, he realizes, totally pissed, that the enemy's attack jammed his demon core. Behind the mask, the commander laughs, claiming no sword is going to save them now. Quickly, the two brothers regroup side by side to figure out a new plan in the chaos. Surrounded by a massive red sea of hitmen, being outnumbered is starting to feel overwhelming. Super stressed, Blonde Seas grumbles that this debuff is a huge problem for them. Taking the lead, the bodyguard orders the youngest to push forward while he holds off the entire army by himself. Firmly, he tells the kid not to worry and to just focus on beating Scar and saving Eve. Trusting his partner, our prota gives a nod, agreeing to the risky play. Right away, the kid blasts forward like a missile, leaving the grunts in the dust. Ready to brawl, the blonde turns to face the army of assassins, totally willing to tank the hits if he has to. With a confident smile, he warns that losing his core doesn't change a thing, since he can still blow everything up with pure magic. Smashing the ground with energy, the blonde casts a rock spell, creating a colossal wall. The solid structure bursts from the yard, launching the hitmen into the air like ragdolls. Through the smoke, he yells for the youngest to focus on the side building, because that's definitely where the target is hiding. Desperate, the masked commander orders his men to chase the kid while he tries to bust the shield wall. But Sea's magic takes no prisoners, and stone spikes skewer anyone who tries to take a step forward. The commander barely dodges the spikes, clicking his tongue in pure frustration. A massive forest of sharp rocks forms, cutting the battlefield completely in half. Away from the mess, our prota runs hard, tearing through the air to reach the building. Back in the yard, the blonde taunts the commander, daring him to fight hand to hand. Meanwhile, inside a fancy room, Scar has Sister Eve tied down to a chair. Keeping her cool, the girl dryly replies he can ask 1,000 times, but she's not talking. Trying to play mind games, the redhead swears he already captured her staff and threatens to kill everyone. Staring at him with pure disgust, the sister fires back, saying that having a piece of trash like him in the family is an absolute disgrace. Suddenly, the sounds of the fight outside make the room's windows rattle, spooking the coward. Realizing there's a problem, the redhead panics, guessing the crazy runt actually had the guts to raid his base. Seeing her brother freak out, the girl mutters that he still doesn't get how screwed he is. Preaching to him, She warns that cheap tricks don't work on the youngest, because the kid is pure Dasker pride. Trying to save face, Scar forces a nervous laugh, claiming he's finally going to test the youth's strength. Completely losing it, the redhead draws his sword, calling his sister a disrespectful brat. But before he can touch her, our hero shatters the window in a cinematic flying entry, crashing into the room. Landing on the floor, the boy tells his sister that the cavalry has finally arrived to clean up this mess. Sword in hand and looking deadly serious, the youth stares the rival down. Relieved, the tied-up girl still finds a way to smile and complain that the rescue took too long. Blind with rage, Scar points his blade at the youngest, screaming the kid's name like a total psycho. Keeping his cold, ruthless vibe, our proto points his weapon right back, warning that playtime ends here. The vibe in the room gets super heavy as both brothers size each other up, ready for a bloodbath. Without backing down a single millimeter, their staring contest makes it clear only one of them is walking out of this room. Trying to act tough again, the villain mocks him, asking if the brat seriously thinks he has a chance to win. Flashing his most sarcastic smile, our kid replies that an absolute beatdown is already guaranteed. Filled with rage, Scar charges in screaming, but gets stonewalled by the youngest, who sprays purple energy everywhere. With a violent strike, our proto slams his sword against the redhead's blade, scattering purple sparks. The impact is so heavy that the building's brickwork explodes into pieces just from the sheer force. Launched across the room, Scar flies backward, shattering the glass roof, and crashes into the yard below. Not giving him a breather, the kid lands in the yard right after him, sword ready to continue the punishment. With eyes glowing with pure hatred, the hero locks onto his downed target. Instantly, the system reveals the redhead has 5-star stats and is the actual creator of the abyssal style. Walking calmly, the dark-haired youth asks why the coward used assassins against a literal child. Smirking ironically, the villain replies that the answer should be pretty obvious. Blind with rage, Scar yells that the brat annoys him too much and unleashes a terrifying purple aura. With a fast jump, they clash again, creating an energy wave that kicks dust off the ground. Surprised, the proto notices his core's debuff is gone and wonders if he just stepped out of the magic trap's range. Pissed off, the redhead throws it in his face that their dad acknowledged the youngest kid's strength, even though he's so weak. Taking him head-on, our hero tanks the heavy attack from his brother, who's coming in hot. Screaming for the kid to die, the villain amps up the pressure, covering the area in darkness. The boy quickly parries the strike, forcing his rival to take a step back. Sliding across the floor, the coward creates some space so he doesn't eat a surprise counter. Panting, Scar mentally admits that the brat's sword skills are the real danger here. Holding his giant blade, he declares the youngest is just going to be a stepping stone for his victory in the succession war. Wasting no time, the villain triggers the third form of the abyssal style, kicking up a creepy fog. A bizarre army of giant, armed skeletons rises from the ground, ready for a night shift. Soon, the bone creatures rush the kid in an unstoppable wave. Super calm, the hero analyzes the situation and guesses this is just a cheap magic trick. Putting up his guard, he clashes his sword against the undead blades to test their physical strength. From the heavy impact, the dark-haired youth's eyes widen as he realizes how serious this actually is. Under pressure, he falls back, dragging his shoes on the stone as the army pushes forward. The proto quickly figures out this isn't a normal illusion, because the skeletons have actual, physical mass. More bone monsters step out of the yard shadows, boxing the kid in from all sides. Cornered, he summons his golden energy and forms a divine shield to tank the first wave of attacks. Muttering the second holy form, the energy explodes and purifies the closest creatures. In the blink of an eye, he summons twin sky blades and slices the air with golden slashes. A storm of divine light drops from the sky, cutting the giant skeletons like they're made of glass. The golden energy zigzags across the area, wiping the field clean in milliseconds. Dusting off his clothes, the hero complains that this summon magic is super annoying. Furious, Scar punches the ground hard, cracking the rock out of pure spite. The redhead immediately spawns more and more bone monsters at the kid without pausing. Cocky, the villain sarcastically asks if the brat really thinks he can solo an entire army. Full of himself, Scar yells at the top of his lungs, daring his brother's physical limits. Proving him wrong, our proto rushes into the middle of the horde and disintegrates everything as a dark, purple blur. With cold, calculating eyes, he doesn't drop the pace for a single split second. Spinning his glowing sword, he destroys another wave of skeletons trying to box him in. Showing no mercy, the kid fires energy blasts in all directions, keeping total control of the arena. Mocking his rival's face, the hero warns that it doesn't matter how much trash he spawns. Slicing another enemy, he keeps up an insane kill streak without breaking a single drop of sweat. Dropping a cool one-liner, he claims trash is always going to be trash, no matter how many there are. With a perfect finisher, the golden light wipes out the last remaining skeletons in the area. On his knees and panting, Scar sees his attack fail and lets out a painful groan. Watching from afar, the Proto stands completely still, sword in hand, just waiting for the next move. Refusing to take the L, the villain jams his blade into the ground, dropping a puddle of darkness. A spooky rift opens in the yard, sucking up the area's energy in a really weird way. Startled by the loud noise, our kid gets ready for whatever freak is about to crawl out of that hole. Right away, a colossal bone dragon emerges from the rift, trashing the ground beneath it. Blind with rage, the redhead points his finger and orders the beast to tear the kid apart once and for all. With a terrifying roar, the skeleton dragon spreads its wings and flies at the hero. Flashing a sly smile, the Proto notes this is the perfect time to test out a brand new toy. In his vision, the system's screen flashes, announcing his new Holy Darkness Eye skill. He quickly triggers the 5th divine form and switches his fighting stance. The kid's eyes glow with an intense, scary color, locking right onto the massive creature. Calling down a golden lightning bolt straight from the sky, he blasts the spell right onto the bone beast's head. The hit causes a massive explosion that drops the dragon to the ground, beaten and useless. With a perfect jump, the hero lands right on top of the tamed monster's skull. With his eyes glowing gold, the Proto stares down his brother from up high, looking like an absolute boss. Control lightning runs through the dragon's bones, proving the creature just switched teams. Frozen in shock, Scar watches his own summon act as a mount for the youngest kid. Desperate, the redhead stammers, asking what the hell he just did, and screams for the dragon to attack the kid. Through the system screen, the youth sees that his new vision hacks the opponent's technique and completely steals control. With maximum sass, the hero announces the creature takes orders from him now and tells his rival to stop crying. Pissed off and cursing, the villain fires up the first abyssal form, getting ready for a Hail Mary play. Yelling the move's name, he shoots a sharp energy spear at the flying beast. The spell blows up mid-air, creating a cloud of dust but doing 0 actual damage to the shielded monster. Using the distraction, the Proto jumps off the dragon and dives straight at the coward. Not backing down, the kid plants his feet on the creature, making it clear he completely owns the beast. Reloading his sword, the brother tries the same dark move again in pure, blind desperation. The dark spear fires again in a red streak, tearing through the tense wind of the yard. The impact causes another useless explosion, proving raw power isn't going to save Scar's skin. With unbelievable speed, the hero cuts through the blast and lands a clean slash that makes the villain cough up blood instantly. Cornered by the kid's push, the redhead sweats cold and mutters that he's out of options. Without hesitating, the coward crushes a weird vial, releasing some freaky purple smoke. Right after, a dark portal opens in the air, shooting lightning in all directions. Out of the shadows, 2 hitmen step out, holding Sister Eve hostage. With a wicked smile on his face, the villain sarcastically asks if the youth came all the way here just to save the girl. Pressing his blade against the girl's throat, the lackey shows the threat is completely real. Furious at the dirty trick, our hero freezes in place while his rival warns that one wrong move means she's dead. Full of himself, Scar promises to let the hostage go only after he completely ruins the youngest. Blackmailed, the Proto grits his teeth, super frustrated that he can't make a move. Suddenly, a violent red explosion rips through the ground exactly where the hitmen were standing. Startled by the blast, the coward goes wide-eyed, not understanding what kind of crazy just happened. In the middle of the dust, the oldest brother Damien appears, wearing giant armor and shielding the girl. Completely in shock, the redhead stammers the armored guy's name, thinking he just saw a ghost. Serious as a brick wall, the giant announces Eve declared neutrality in the war, meaning she's untouchable. Losing his mind, the villain yells, asking what's stopping him from breaking house rules. Standing firm, the older brother states he'll execute anyone who goes against the family rules. With his plan ruined, the redhead clicks his tongue in pure spite. But, with an intense look, our hero steps in and tells the giant to stay out of it. With a heavy voice, the youth warns that this fight is about the demon core and it's totally personal. Dead set on revenge, the kid makes it clear nobody is stealing his prey. Flashing a tiny smile, Damien agrees that stepping in would also be a serious rule break. So the big guy steps back and tells the 2 brothers to go all out and settle this fight right now. Turning to face his target, the Prota calls the coward back to the brawl. To disrespect him completely, he asks if the trash can even fight a clean match without needing hostages. Hurt by the comment, the villain complains that everyone in the family tree always looked down on him. Pulling out all his dark power, Scar activates the 7th form of his abyssal style. In an explosion of purple energy, he summons an insane suit of shadow armor. With glowing red eyes, the redhead swears he's going to chop the youngest into tiny pieces this time. Not backing up an inch, our kid fixes his stance and realizes the enemy's move is meant to mess with his head. Thinking fast, he figures the best defense is to just go full offense and not leave any openings. In a violent charge, they clash swords, creating a massive boom in the middle of the yard. Sparks fly as they trade lightning-fast blows. To finish it, the hero fires off the double sky technique, wrapped in golden light. But the rival's shadow armor absorbs the hit and completely blocks the attack. Totally shocked, our kid can't figure out how the guy tanked a max-level attack like that. With his rival's guard open, the villain triggers the 4th dark form. In a fraction of a second, he throws an invisible slash that cuts the air with massive crimson energy. Caught off guard, the Prota feels the blade graze him with full force. On pure reflex, he crosses his sword over his chest and blocks most of the damage. Feeling his arm throb, the youth realizes a core-boosted attack is way too heavy to block head-on. Showing no mercy, the redhead pushes forward, cutting the air with pure hatred. Full of mockery, the coward yells, asking where the brat thinks he's going to run. Right after, a massive explosion of gold lightning and shadows swallows the fighters. Pushed back by the raw power, our hero lets out a muffled groan of pain. On the other side, the villain clicks his tongue, annoyed that his target dodged a fatal wound. Leaning on his sword, the hero takes a deep breath to recover after the hit. They clash again, throwing a flash of power across the ruined arena. With a quick jump, they create some distance to reset the fight. Paying close attention to the opponent, the Prota admits the redhead's technique is perfect on both offense and defense. Straight up, the kid asks why someone so strong chooses to play dirty instead of fighting fair. Full of bitterness, Scar replies that their dad always called his talent for illusions useless trash. Driven by real resentment, the coward explains he built the entire abyssal style just to prove he was worthy. But not even these insane techniques made the old monster look his way. With a totally corrupted soul, the villain declares his only option left is to win at any cost. Flashing a psycho smile, he swears he'll force the patriarch to eat his words when the tournament ends. Exploding with intense red energy, he warns he doesn't care about getting his hands dirty with pure evil. Ending the chat, the redhead tells the youngest he's just going to be fertilizer for his success. Channeling all his bottled-up rage, he preps the 9th restricted form. In an insane display of power, the villain summons the Red Dragon of Ruin. The scarlet energy beast rips through the sky, letting out a bone-chilling roar. Like a meteor, the dense dragon dives straight down to eat our hero. The beast crashing into the ground kicks up a massive cloud of dust and rocks. Suddenly, a golden flash pierces the smoke, pushing the destructive attack back. With his feet planted, the Prota holds off the insane pressure, radiating pure divine light. Above him, the energy freak keeps pushing the barrier, trying to crush its target. Pushed to his limit, the kid forces his core into overdrive, shooting blue and purple lightning everywhere. Laughing loud, Scar says the kid is out of gas and will die if he relies just on his blade. Calmly, our hero pulls a weird vial from his jacket. Eyes wide, the redhead recognizes the item instantly and loses his swagger. Ironically, the Prota explains he turned the maid's poison into a perfectly stable serum. Without blinking, the kid chugs the dangerous liquid right down his throat. Terrified, the villain yells, asking if his brother totally lost his mind, since that stuff makes cores explode. In the middle of a golden lightning storm, the youth notes his body is already immune to the poison. Glowing like the sun, our Prota declares the toxin is now acting as a super-charged stim for his core. Instantly, the system Hades pops up, showing his holy power hit level 20, unlocking a totally new blast of light and dark. With a serious tone, the kid warns he has a strong reason not to quit, because the disaster from his past can absolutely not happen again. Firing up the 2nd divine form, a massive pillar of light drops from the sky, tearing the whole scene apart. Right after announcing the light-dark blast, our hero swings his sword with everything he's got. Desperate, the redhead screams as the dense dragon crashes right into the crushing golden energy. With zero chance of winning, the dark beast starts breaking apart under the insane pressure of the divine strike. In a violent collision, both spells explode, creating a tornado of ruin in the yard. Instantly, a flash blinds everyone, clearing the shadows from the battlefield. The The force of the impact sends a massive shock wave across the whole arena, sparing nothing. As the dust settles, you can see the damage and the rocks thrown everywhere. Tossed back like a ragdoll, the villain tries to find his footing on the completely destroyed ground. Right in the middle of the crash, the energy shoots up like a mushroom cloud, ending the fight for good. When the air finally clears, the scene shows the coward defeated, while our kid is still standing without a scratch. From a distance, Sister Eve and the giant Damien are speechless at the shocking finish. Calm footsteps echo over the broken rocks as the youngest walks up to his rival's body. Pointing his giant sword at the trash's face, the hero says he doesn't really care about killing him here. Straight up, the Prota demands the beaten brother surrender immediately. Humiliated, Scar accepts the loss and agrees to hand over his own demon core as the prize. But the hero's eyes catch a weird movement at the very last millisecond. In a dirty, cowardly move, a hidden short blade flies straight at the kid's throat. With a crazy, maniacal smile, the redhead bets his last card on this betrayal. Super agile, our kid just turns his head, letting the blade graze by without doing any damage. Shocked by the dirty trick, the sister and the giant go wide-eyed at the extreme cowardice. Filled with hate, the villain yells he'll never bow down to a piece of trash like his little brother. Swearing he won't let the brat stay on top, he charges in for one last suicide attack, but takes a clean counter hit instead. Vital fluid sprays on the cold rock as the coward drops to his knees, groaning in pain. Desperate, the purple-haired girl screams her brother's name, thinking the worst just happened. The armored guy takes a step forward with a serious face, ready to stop the bloodbath. Refusing to lose, the redhead raises his short blade and goes for another suicide run, screaming that the show ends here. In a dry, fatal response, the hero's glowing sword runs right through the traitor's chest, spraying vital fluid into the air. Completely drained, the villain falls flat on his back on the cracked ground, and finally passes out for good, ending the chaos. Covered in cuts, Scar spits up red liquid, paying the price for his own arrogance. The entire yard goes dead silent after the brawl finally wraps up. Holding his injured shoulder, our youth reflects that this family's blind arrogance always matters more than their lives. Standing over his brother's body, he takes a deep breath to let the battle adrenaline fade. Relieved, the sister walks over to the fighting zone, asking how the kid survived all that craziness. Bluntly, the giant points out the cut was fatal and no doctor is getting here in time, so he's going to handle it himself. Wasting zero time, the girl summons an intense green energy and kneels next to the dying guy. Using the first shadow flower form, she funnels all her healing magic into the redhead's open wound. Through the misty lantern spell, green light wraps around the coward's body, stopping his spirit from fading. By some miracle, the bleeding stops and the guy's skin gets some color back. Impressed by the spell, the hero watches the scene, slowly putting his sword away. Flashing a tired smile, the young woman notes she might suck at fighting, but she's an expert at extracting demon cores. In a good mood, the youth thanks her for saving the trash's life, but the girl changes the subject. Moving fast, she points out that the winner's prize now officially belongs to the youngest. A vibrant red energy sphere floats right above the defeated villain's chest. Focused on the glowing orb, the hero mutters the name of that insane power. Step by step, he walks up to the prize in the middle of the ruined arena, while his sister just watches. With a steady hand, the kid grabs the red energy, feeling the raw power pulsing between his fingers. Instantly, the dark heat enters his body, shooting purple and gold lightning everywhere. At that exact second, the system HUD pops up, confirming the absorption was a success. According to the magic stats, his demon core just leveled up from 2 to 5 stars. An insane power jump. Mind blown, the Prota realizes this instant level up is worth decades of brutal training. Snapping back to reality, the hero looks around and notices the main mess has calmed down. Suddenly, the big blonde guy runs into the yard, desperately looking for the sibling duo. Frozen in shock, the bodyguard admits he never expected to see the runt totally crush the arrogant redhead. Super worried, the blonde checks on the girl, but she explains the giant stepped in right on time. The blonde gives the big guy a quiet nod of thanks, while the other just says he was following house rules. Breaking the silence, a formally dressed servant walks through the broken gate, grabbing everyone's attention. With sharp eyes, the hero and the giant stare at the messenger, realizing their break is already over. Even the rescue duo turns nervously to hear what the dressed-up guy has to say. With a serious voice, the armored guy praises the fight and admits he's super curious about the kid's weird hidden power. Turning his back, the giant says the kid needs to talk directly to the old man now and clears the way for the servant. With a polite bow, the servant announces that the Grand Patriarch wants to see the boy right now. The scene cuts straight to the terrifying, solid fortress of the Dasker family's supreme commander. Inside the fancy office, the old monster mentions the rumors about the kid's win and the stolen energy. Resting his chin on his hands, the boss gives a killer glare, trying to figure out if the story is true or cap. Without blinking, standing tall, our proto replies he won the fight and took the prize because he earned it. Curious, the old man asks what the rival's actual level was, and the kid admits his brother easily outclassed him in almost every stat. Giving a hard stare, the monster asks how the youngest managed to crush someone way more experienced and stronger. Silence fills the room for a few seconds while the hero plans the perfect answer. Putting a hand on his chest, the youth declares that his uncontrollable hunger for power made the difference, since losing was never an option. Flashing an evil grin, the Supreme Commander praises the heir's bold and twisted answer. The Patriarch explains the redhead crossed a line he shouldn't have, so the youngest deserves a reward for cleaning house. Flexing his authority, the old man tells the kid to name his prize, and the proto instantly asks for a trip to a specific place. Frowning, the Patriarch thinks it's weird and asks why he isn't being greedy, since a real winner would ask for mountains of gold or legendary weapons. With a serious tone, our hero warns that the reward he wants is way better than any material stuff. Intrigued, the old monster realizes this is all about getting raw power and asks where they're heading. Speeding through rocky mountains, a carriage drives fast, taking our hero to his next target. On the way, the kid confirms to the maids that this trip is his official reward, but warns them they aren't here on vacation. Calmly, he tells the girls to chill and leave any problems they run into up to him. The maids agree right away, trusting their lives to the boss. Suddenly, one of the girls gasps, looking out the wooden window. Amazed, both of them point at the horizon, saying they finally made it to the spot. Checking out the view, our proto mutters that they've reached the legendary city built by the human Dragon Alliance. Massive and impressive, the city of Draconia sits right in the middle of the mountains like a real fortress. As soon as the carriage stops, our hero asks who the reptile-faced guards blocking the road are. Standing tall, the scaly fighters introduce themselves as the territory's official envoys. Instantly, the guards take the lead to safely escort the group to the gates. But the kid's sharp eyes spot something sketchy moving in the bushes. Cold as ice, he doesn't react, just waiting for the threat to show itself. Chatting with the reptile commander, the proto mentions that having an escort really makes the trip easier. Without warning, a massive creature drops from the trees, roaring that it found the Daskor target. Super heavy, the beast lands, kicking up dust and cracking the dirt road. Right behind the boss, a whole pack of red-horned ogres steps out of the shadows, looking for a fight. Drawing his sword, the reptile guard identifies the rival clan and tells the young master to step back. With his blade already out, the hero listens as the commander explains that these beasts are fighting for turf control in the area. Basically, the Red Clan only cares about violence and causing trouble, while Draconia's people are just trying to keep the peace. Getting the picture, the kid realizes the monsters showed up specifically to ruin the family alliance. To keep them safe, he turns his head and orders the maids to lock themselves in the carriage right now. Stomping heavily, the monster boss laughs when he sees the scaly escort is already taking a beating. Full of swagger, the big guy warns he doesn't waste time on weaklings and tells the kid to run home while he's still breathing. Hearing the cheap trash talk, our proto just gives a totally ironic smile. Flaring up his hybrid lightning, he shoots the threat right back, telling the bug to leave if it doesn't want to get deleted. Hurt by the insult, the ogre cracks its knuckles, calling his rival an arrogant brat. Exploding with violent red energy, the monster swears it's going to crush our hero's bones into dust. Standing completely still in the middle of his power storm, the kid fixes his stance, waiting for the hit. In a crazy clash, the hero raises his energy blade to block the head-on attack. Clenching its giant fist, the beast throws a completely merciless punch at its target. The heavy hit shatters the ground, kicking up a thick cloud of rock and dirt everywhere. The giant crater left behind proves just how insane the red monster's brute strength is. Spinning in the air like an acrobat, the hero dodges the devastating punch by a hair. Totally annoyed that it punched air, the ogre lets out a rage roar that shakes the ground, ripping a whole chunk of rock out of the floor. The beast throws the boulder right at our kid. Without missing a beat, the youth fires the first divine form, shooting a beam of light and darkness. In a flash, the beam cuts through the air and vaporizes the flying rock into a million pieces. Using the dust as a smokescreen, the monster charges in with a clenched fist, locked onto its prey, throwing a super fast right hook. The creature tries to wipe the kid off the map for good. The attack is so strong the shockwave shakes the trees all around them. Blocking the hit, the proto mocks the monster's power, calling its move sloppy. Explaining the obvious, the hero says relying just on aggression gets you nowhere, and pushes the beast back to make some room. Boiling with rage, the big guy calls the kid an idiot for agreeing to a close quarters fight. Jumping high, the beast wins up a heavy aerial smash to crush its opponent into the dirt. But our proto is faster and throws a deep, upward slash right into the monster's chest. Instantly, a blast of holy light follows the blade, tearing through the big guy's thick skin. Spitting dark blood, the ambush leader faceplants into the mud, totally neutralized. Cold as ice, the kid looks over his shoulder and dares the rest of the pack to step up. Up on the hill, the red grunts freeze in panic seeing their boss get humiliated like that. Running on pure instinct and rage, the whole pack roars together and charges down the hill to get payback. Looking like an avalanche of muscle and horns, they jump straight at our fighter. Still smiling, the kid aims the second divine form, charging energy at the tip of his sword. In one killer shot, a massive golden beam wipes out the entire squad, turning the creatures to ash mid-air. Completely toasted, the beast's bodies fall off the hill and crash hard into the dry dirt. Shocked, the Draconia guards admit the here's raw power is even crazier than the rumors said. Relieved, the maids come out of hiding to praise the fight, while the kid gives them a light warning for not listening to orders. Full of excuses, the servant says it's a good maid's job to watch her master win. Changing the subject, the hero looks up at the sky and tells the last guy hiding in the clouds to come down. Right away, a giant winged creature follows the order and dives through the air. Flapping its heavy wings, the winged being lands super elegantly in the middle of the dirt road. Walking with heavy steps, an elite fighter walks up, radiating pure military boss energy from head to toe. With a stern voice, the knight says he watched every single move of the kid's fighting style up close. Putting a hand on his chest, the big scaly guy formally introduces himself as the commander of the territory's defense forces. Sharp as ever, our proto asks why he didn't help in the fight, and gets a snarky reply that a king doesn't need to protect weaklings. Happy with the attitude, the kid smirks and asks if he just passed a surprise endurance test. Keeping his scary vibe, the commander confirms he passed and takes charge of escorting everyone to Lord Alcardos. After all the chaos, the carriage finally passes the main gates and enters the busy streets of the capital. Amazed, the maids watch out the window as humans and lizardmen casually do business in the same buildings. Up ahead, a group of kids from different races run around playing sword fight in a crazy peaceful scene. Checking out the view, the hero suggests the girls take the rest of the day off to explore the city. Up in the bright blue sky, flying dragons escort the carriage all the way to the highest peak. Leaving the sunlight behind, the squad walks into dark stone hallways carved right into the mountain, heading for the main fortress. Standing in front of a colossal gate marked with a dragon emblem, the group just waits in the dark for what's next. Holding up a glowing gadget, the scaly commander loudly and formally announces he brought young Master No. Suddenly, the stone emblem glows with a weird magic light, and a deep voice tells them to come in. With a heavy groan, the giant doors open on their own, showing the absolute pitch black room inside. Immediately, a storm of raw energy blasts out of the room, hitting the whole squad hard. Standing firm, the proto feels the crushing pressure and mentally notes this power is equal to, or even stronger than his monster dad's. Unable to handle it, the elite lizard guards drop to their knees, totally crushed by the room's heavy aura. Terrified, the maids hide behind the hero, who stands tall like an absolute brick wall. Inside the scary darkness of the castle, only two glowing blue eyes stare intensely at the guests. Impressed by the overwhelming vibe, the youth looks upright as the creepy voice welcomes him. Finally, a majestic, massive white dragon steps out and calls the kid his young partner. Looking like royalty on the throne, the huge white dragon waits for the guests in the dark hall. Meanwhile, outside, the maids and lizard guards wait around looking super stressed. Walking in casually, Noah introduces himself as Victor Dasker's son and says he's here following orders. Keeping his cool, the kid thanks them for the warm welcome. Surprised they sent a big shot to fetch him. With a sharp look, the mythical beast watches the boy and admits it senses a familiar power coming from him. Flashing a confident smile, the proto thinks the ancient Dragon King's radar never misses. Ready to test his limits, he clenches his fist and starts letting his demonic energy loose. In a power explosion, The hero gets swallowed by a crazy purple aura that crackles across the entire hall. Staring down the winged monster, the kid flexes his strength without an ounce of fear. Surprised by the flash, the scaly boss's giant eye goes wide, amazed to see that light again. Skipping the small talk, the beast tells Commander Adalbert to brief the kid on the mission details. With the bosses okay, the lizard warrior steps up to explain what the kingdom needs him to do. He says the dragon race is fighting a bloody, endless war against the violent Oni tribe. Pointing at a war map, the captain sadly admits the balance of power just tipped the wrong way. The lizard explains the enemies just hired a genius strategist, guaranteeing the dragons are going to lose. Straight to the point, the kid asks if his job is just to carry the game, but the captain says no. Knocking over the enemy pieces on the board, the lizard warrior shows what the squad actually wants. With a heavy voice, Adalbert demands the Proto put a permanent end to this endless war. The lizard commander explains why they're in a rush, saying he's worried about his supreme master's future. It's obvious the imposing Lord Arkados' days are numbered, and he's nearing the end of the line. Sizing up the situation, our hero silently realizes the old dragon barely has any time left. Then the kid remembers Arkados' core, a brutal power source that spawns when the beast dies. In his past life, that power fell into the hands of a sadistic criminal who caused an absolute massacre. With a determined smile, the Dasker hair thumps his chest and accepts the job without a second thought. Relieved, the Dragon King says thanks and promises to give the kid the remains of his own body as payment. By the table, the captain guarantees full backup for the mission and decides to share a dangerous rumor. The lizard commander reveals the rival tribe managed to get their hands on the 8 treasure orbs. Hearing the artifact's name, the kid goes quiet, processing just how huge this problem is. Internally, he groans, knowing those magic items buff entire armies and are going to be a massive headache. Sighing, the hero says he'll look into the drama alone, thinking about squeezing info out of Sister Eve. Walking the streets, the Proto figures the beef with the Oni could turn into a total race war. Looking at the busy city, he admits fixing this whole war solo is going to be really tough. Flashing a nostalgic smile, the kid decides to recruit an old friend to help with this crazy mission. The hero walks confidently to the central plaza, where a giant dragon statue decorates the spot. Near the monument, he spots the girl playing an instrument and celebrates finding her so fast. In his past life, this woman was known as the Saint, an OP mage when it came to healing and shields. Unfortunately, the tragic memory of her dying during the apocalypse still haunts the guy's mind. Putting the past aside, he walks up to the girl, hyped about this random reunion. Feeling him there, the girl turns her head and shoots a cold, piercing glare right at the kid. Thrown off by the stare, the Proto puts his hands up, asking her to stop looking at him like that. Holding her loot, the brunette acts tough and says her next show isn't starting anytime soon. Confused by the answer, the hero stammers while the girl assumes he's just there for the gig. Not caring about the music talk, the kid ignores the mix up and just asks for her name. Super elegantly, she slides her fingers over the strings, playing a soft tune. Full of charm, the girl introduces herself as Liliana, the official bard of the area. Shocked, the hero can't believe the overpowered saint is just a street bard now. Checking the system, he notices her strength dropped, but her holy stats are still totally broken. With a straight face, the kid calls the girl by her name and says they need to talk right now. Cutting to the chase, the Proto explains the whole critical situation about the war against the Oni. Crossing her arms like she couldn't care less, Liliana gets the drama but turns down the request for help. Annoyed by the instant rejection, our kid asks why she's being so difficult. With her eyes shining, the bard reveals she can smell the unholy energy reeking off him. The kid gets swallowed by his family's purple aura, spooked by how sharp the girl's senses are. To prove he's cool, he summons holy lightning in his hand and asks if that's enough of a guarantee. Surprised, Liliana looks at the golden flash and realizes his prana is a really weird mix of powers. Caving a little, the bard agrees to team up, but demands he fulfill one crazy condition. With a dirty smirk, the woman tells the kid to find her someone good in bed so she can spend the night. Our hero's eyes go wide, and he starts sweating cold, totally glitching out over the wild request. The guy's brain pictures the absurd scene of the bard having a blast with some ripped meathead. Laughing, she says the guy needs to be a muscular gentleman and bans anyone with dark magic. Facepalming, the kid sighs, remembering that the girl being boy crazy was always a chronic issue. Giving a dirty laugh, he agrees to the deal and promises he knows the perfect guy for the job. Happy with the deal, Liliana smiles and dumps the responsibility for this crazy date on the hero. Sealing the contract, the Prota shakes the bard's hand and formally introduces himself as the Dasker Hare. Then the scene cuts to a rustic village built at the bottom of a creepy, foggy mountain. Hiking up the stone path, the girl complains about the walk while the hero says they need allies. The dark-haired youth explains an old friend told him about this place, and that magic artifacts are hidden here. With his eyes on the prize, the hero doesn't let his new partner's complaining get to him. Finally, the duo arrives at the entrance of a spooky cave guarded by ancient stone pillars. In the dark, a mystery warrior is chilling, meditating while wrapped in intense yellow energy. Sensing the intruders, the man opens one eye, shooting a scary golden glare. Instantly, a giant, glowing magic circle pops up on the floor right under our hero's feet. Caught off guard, the Prota is surrounded by his own purple aura, trying to fight the spell's insane pressure. Without warning, an energy blade slices the air, forcing the kid to block on pure instinct. In a colossal explosion of power, a giant purple slash rips through the area and crashes down on the intruders. As the brutal impact settles, the dust clears to show the duo standing at the cave entrance. Sizing up the situation, Liliana figures the attack was just a flex to scare them. Calmly, the kid asks if his partner got spooked, but she instantly denies it. So the two of them push deeper into the dark hallways, keeping a super close eye on their surroundings. Leading the way, the Prota holds his sword tight, ready for anything. Suddenly, a windblade cuts through the dark straight at them. Out of the shadows, a bunch of creepy, dinosaur-looking crawlers surround the duo. Gripping her holy book, the mage drops to the back and plays the support role. Wasting zero time, one of the beasts lunges hard to attack the kid. Channeling demonic energy into his blade, the hero gets ready to scrub the area. A massive electric slash tears through the scene, swallowing the enemies in a blink. With pinpoint accuracy, the purple tech shreds the monsters before they even hit the floor. Happy with the damage, the guy promises he can solo these bugs no problem. Impressed by the kid's strength, the bard hypes up his power. But out of nowhere, a huge tail sweeps the floor right behind the hero. Caught totally off guard by the sneak attack, the Prota yells his partner's name, worried. A scaly monster opens its mouth full of teeth, aiming all its rage right at the bard. Violently, the creature charges, tearing up the ground to try and eat the girl. But Liliana is quick, backflipping gracefully to dodge the rush. The beast faceplants into the rocks, kicking up dust without hitting its target. Landing safe, she tells him she knows how to look after herself just fine. Curious about the bug, the kid mentions he's never seen monsters like this before. The mage explains that the built-up energy in the cave forces them to mutate out of control. The hero instantly gets why the suppressor artifacts were stashed in this hole. Backing his theory, the girl confirms that's exactly what they came to grab. He also asks if the Ani tribe is the real big bad here, but the mage tells him not to jump to conclusions. The two keep heading down through the creepy tunnels packed with crystallized energy. Pointing down a hall, Liliana announces they've hit the deepest zone. Right then, the bard's eyes quickly lock onto a glow coming from the back. Hyped, she points into the dark, asking if they found the loot. Sensing danger, the Prota tells the girl to stop before she touches the stuck sword. Walking carefully, he takes the lead to check out the mystery artifact. Suddenly, the kid feels something heavy moving under the floor. Without a second thought, he warns the mage about the ambush. With a quick jump, the hero grabs his partner, barely dodging the giant fangs. A colossal monster with purple scales bursts out of the rocks, roaring insanely loud. Scanning the room, the guy notices the beast blocked their only way out. Not giving them a break, the predator shoots a freakish fire blast from its mouth. Seeing the size of the heat wave, the youth realizes they have nowhere to run. Thinking fast, the saint opens her magic book, unleashing her holy aura. Chanting a divine spell, she calls on the world's rules to shield the duo. A magic barrier of golden rings pops up just in time to block the flames. The fire swallows the whole room, making the cave boiling hot. The blast sweeps the floor, melting everything in its path. Holding strong, the mage's hex shield blocks the fatal attack perfectly. Relieved by the block, the kid praises Liliana's insane reflexes. Using the monster's distraction, he gets ready to hit back. Furious, the hero charges like a lightning bolt straight at the giant creature. Loading his sword with demonic energy, he creates a storm of purple lightning. With a clean cut, the Prota chops off a piece of the beast's leg, making blood spray. Feeling the hit, the predator lets out a painful, angry roar. Furious, the beast counters, trying to crush the kid with its teeth. But the swordsman parries the strike mid-air, jumping away from danger. Watching the tense fight, the mage realizes the cave won't survive the pressure. Dumping her light into the ground, She triggers a new spell formation. Holy chains erupt from the floor, locking the giant monster in a pillar of light. Scared of a cave-in, she begs her partner to finish the fight fast. Agreeing with her, he charges his energy for a focused ow attack. Dropping off the radar, the youth turns into a blur, circling the creature at insane speed. Letting out all his power, he readies the first form of his divine combat style. Mixing light and dark, the hero's sword glows with devastating brightness. With a violent push, he launches up, slicing the boss's body from the bottom up. Putting everything into the final hit, the kid lets out a battle cry. The blade's impact punches through the enemy's guard, creating a crazy shockwave. A two-tone energy pillar swallows the beast, destroying everything around it. Completely wrecked, the creature drops to the floor and starts turning to smoke. After clearing the room, the guy checks if the bard is okay and says they need to leave fast. With the path clear, the two walk up to the center of the magic circle on the floor. Without hesitating, the kid grabs the handle of the ancient relic tight. Curious, Liliana asks if the sword is the tool that drains the dragon's power. Stashing the prize, he confirms it and tells her they gotta get out of there. The scene cuts to the massive capital, full of dragons flying through the sky. Back in town, the hero hands a sealed envelope to his partner. He explains it's a letter of intro for Commander Adalbart. Hyped about the reward, the mage grabs the paper and thanks him a ton for the help. Saying he's heading out, the hero says goodbye to the mage, who waves happily, waving the recommendation letter. Walking down the street, the kid stops in front of a really impressive, busy building. Walking in, he notices the rustic vibe feels a lot like a tavern hall. Soon, a nice waitress walks up and tells him someone is waiting for him. Surprised by the news, the guy is curious to see who the surprise guest is. At a table in the back, a blonde guy raises his hand to wave at the hero, who recognizes his friend instantly and calls out, "Seize." Sitting across from his guildmate, the prota gets right to it and asks why he's there. Keeping it brief, the blonde knight slides a document across the table and tells his friend to read the details. In the text, Sister Eve says she looked into the 8 treasure orbs the second she got his message, while his buddy casually eats a snack. The kid reads that one of these dangerous items was stolen from a neighboring country. The report says the guy responsible is a wanted criminal named Fungus, and he ran straight to the Draconia region. Worried about the mess, Eve warns that the crook is definitely going to use the artifact in this war and tells him to be careful. The letter explains the power locked inside this cursed orb is strong enough to wipe a whole city off the map. This crazy, destructive magic is known by the scary name, Starfall. Realizing how bad the warning is, the hero quietly repeats the spell's name, trying to come up with a plan. The kid quickly figures out this is the exact same magic that wiped out the Dragon Kingdom in his past life. At the bottom of the note, his sister says she's lending him C's for the mission and demands her brother comes home alive. Getting the picture, the hero confirms the blonde is going to help with the fight, and the knight agrees, pumped to train with the dragons. Flashing a confident smile, the prota mentions the deal works out perfectly for everyone. But the peace doesn't last long, because Liliana busts into the tavern screaming the kid's name along with Adalbart's. Stomping over, the mage points her finger right in the hero's face, complaining that this wasn't what they agreed on. Furious, the girl yells that the dragon captain is married with kids, saying she can't hook up with a guy like that. The freak out grabs everyone's attention in the bar, making things super awkward. Keeping his cool, the kid tries to explain he only introduced her formally to the cavalry commander. The giant lizard warrior apologizes for the mess, while the hero mentally kicks himself for not knowing the guy was taken. Owning the mistake, the guy puts his hands up in surrender and promises to find someone else for the bet. Suddenly, the woman's eyes turn into literal hearts and she sighs, completely in love, announcing she already found the perfect match. Totally out of the loop, the blonde knight grunts, having no idea what's going on. Wasting no time, the mage steps up and grabs the warrior's arm hard. Glued to the guy who turns bright red from panic, the bard openly drools over the new target's good looks and ripped muscles. Freaked out by how bold she is, the blonde rips his arm away and steps back, asking what the hell is wrong with this woman. Totally chill, the hero explains she's a new ally and that he promised to set her up with a guy. Ignoring the drama, Liliana goes on the offensive again and locks her hands onto the knights. Looking thirsty as hell, the girl begs him to spend at least one night of passion with her. Dying of embarrassment, the warrior pushes the bard's face away and tells her to stop talking about weird stuff in public. Laughing at his friend's panic, the prota flashes a dirty smirk and tells the mage she can do whatever she wants with the guy. The kid says his debt is paid, making the woman super hyped and leaving the poor blonde in absolute shock. Trying to break free, the knight struggles and tells the crazy lady to get off him right now. Getting pushed. The mage doesn't even care and shamelessly tells him they're going to have a long night. While the blonde screams that he never agreed to any of this, the hero quietly sneaks away from the table. Without a second thought, the kid fires up his demonic aura and jumps out the window, ditching the duo in the tavern. Surprised by the sudden escape, the woman looks back, trying to process what just happened. Outside, the prota yells that he's running to give the new intel straight to the Dragon King. Standing on the roof, the kid plans to move fast and get ahead of the job while his buddy distracts the thirsty partner. Through the tavern window, the knight watches the whole thing, looking worried, and tells the hero not to push himself too hard. Thinking on the way, the kid remembers the Oni King has monster-level strength that easily rivals his dad's. Then he takes off running across the roofs, leaving the poor blonde behind begging him to come back. But the warrior's break is short, because the bard's hands are already grabbing his cape tight. Cutting the scene, the prota shows up carrying the partner bridal style, saying they don't have time to chase the runaway right now. After all, the duo finally made it to the edge of the demon race's creepy fortress, and the mission has to keep moving. Putting the girl down, he looks at the enemy camp and asks if they can actually raid this place alone. Focused on the job, the youth makes it clear they aren't here to start a brutal war, just to smash those cursed orbs. Still unsure about the crazy plan, the mage hesitates, not knowing if this will actually work in reality. Staring at the cliff packed with armed ogres on patrol, she asks how the hell they're getting past all that security. Picking the woman back up, the hero argues that the tribe's monsters are huge, but super slow. Right then, the purple demonic energy starts crackling hard around the swordsman's legs. Like a rocket, he launches off the cliff, promising they'll cross the whole base using pure speed. A streak of mixed light cuts across the main bridge, while the giant guards just stand there without even blinking. In a fraction of a second, the duo weaves around the camp's huts, giving the guards zero time to react. Caught off guard by the sudden wind, one of the big guys turns his head, noticing a flash fly by. Trying to focus, the guard is confused as the glowing streak fades into the distance. Before he can finish his sentence, the ogre's hand goes limp, and his heavy wooden club drops to the ground. A second later, the massive monster's head literally slides off his neck, shooting a fountain of blood into the air. Seeing his buddy randomly get decapitated, another demon freaks out and screams that they're under attack. Landing safely with his partner, the mage warns him about the alarm, but the kid coldly promises it's already handled. Immediately, the woman casts a spell, making red rings that act as a soundproof shield. Impressed by the handy magic trick, the swordsman praises his allies' crazy reflexes. Behind them, dozens of horned guards drop dead, chopped up by the invisible slashes the hero left on the way. Giving a charming wink, the bard asks if he has any clue where these relics are stashed. With a sharp look, the prota guesses the items must be deep inside the city, right with the tribe's boss. In his mind, he remembers the criminal fungus was a massive coward who always kissed the strongest guy's boots. Putting it together, the kid is absolutely sure that if that trash is involved, the orbs are in the king's room. Ready to finish the job, the two sneak quietly down the dark halls of the enemy fortress. The duo finally stops in front of a giant door decorated with skulls. Thinking it's weird there are no guards around. Pushing the colossal doors, the hero opens the way to see what's waiting for them in the beast's den. Looking down the dark hall, the hero tells his partner to move up carefully. The giant doors slowly swing open, showing off the creepy interior. The main hall is a massive room covered in thick fog. Walking through the room, the kid focuses on a magic circle on the floor and announces he found the target. Suddenly, the mage looks back, completely terrified by the incoming danger. A crushing attack comes from behind, forcing the swordsman to block on pure reflex without knowing what's going on. Caught off guard, the prota sees the empty hall and tries to figure out how the enemy's presence vanished so fast. Out of nowhere, a voice mocks him, saying the coward fungus was actually right, leaving the kid shocked by the enemy's speed. The giant monster holds the red artifact, admitting he's surprised to see crazy people trying to steal the relic. Staring down the intruders, the red-skinned giant praises the duo's skills for sneaking past the guards outside without causing a scene. With that, the kid funnels his aura into his sword, knowing the fight is going to be brutal but focused on not leaving without the orb. Soon, the demon lets out crushing dark pressure, cockily warning that he has no interest in using cheap tricks. The mage calls on the light from her holy book, apologizing in advance and taking up the support role next to her partner. Absolutely furious and covered in flames, Supreme Commander Giesel swears to crush the brats without a single drop of mercy.